right. Counted for. May we come to order, please? This is the regular meeting of the Garrett Park Town Council. First order of business is approval of the agenda. If I may hear a motion to approve the agenda as circulated.
I'll make the motion to approve the agenda as circulated.
Is there a second? I don't think we need an amendment. I would ask, just as a matter of, if we could put my report under town updates at the end rather than the beginning, it keys off something that Council Member Stroud will be covering. And also, if we're running too late, we can jettison it. All right, with that, is there any other discussion, amendment, change? Vote to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Very well. The consent agenda for this evening consists of the June 9 Town Council meeting minutes. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we will call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
That brings us to presentations by residents. No one on remotely? Anyone in the room? All right. We will then move to the first, the other presentation, which is the design development documents for the town hall renovation. And we have our architect, Greg Wiedemann. Greg, do you want to start off by summarizing?
Sure. Good evening. So I know some of you are new to the council, so we entered into the design development stage of this project. We began by having a geotechnical investigation of the soil conditions and the percolation rates in order for the civil engineer to design the stormwater management system. We brought in a mechanical, electrical, and plumbing consulting engineer, AJ Engineers, who have worked on Penn Place, and Ellert Bryant, the consulting structural engineers. They made a site visit, went into the crawl space, looked at the condition of the building. We did a test pit over beside the foundation of this existing building to see the depth of the current foundations. And each of the engineers, and then we got involved with AdTech, who was the civil engineer. The civil engineer was responsible for developing the site work, the grading, stormwater management, overall site improvements outside the limits of the building. Also to prepare documents for mandatory referral for the county. Some of that was supplemented by work that we did. They require a photometric study to show light levels throughout the property to make sure that none of the neighbors are affected by bright lights and things like that. So it's a collaboration between us and the civil engineer. So on the 29th of July, we put together a set of documents, which I understand that you've seen. And this is the cover sheet of that set of documents. It lists demolition drawings, partition types. The cost estimator does calculations based on individual wall types. So we did that, door, window schedules so that we can get a firm price on windows and doors. And of course, floor plans, elevations, and then representative, thank you.
When you say a firm price based on what?
I'm sorry, I was specifically saying the windows and doors. So we have a schedule.
Okay,
I guess I should say, design development drawings represent preliminary decisions
right,
that we make on your behalf, which we think are appropriate choices. But they will then become a basis for the cost estimate.
right.
Um,
But who gets the schedule of the doors and windows? Is it a lumber yard that sells those things, or it just is a company who's gonna give us an estimate?
So speaking specifically of windows and doors,
Okay,
I spoke to the cost estimator, and he mentioned that that particular line item can be very variable.
okay,
So I offered to go to our suppliers
right,
and get an actual bid.
right,
And I will give that bid to the cost estimator,
good,
because he felt that that was one area that, you know, he didn't want to just use a database
right,
for.
good.
So,
And who's your supplier?
well, we have specified Marvin,
Okay,
and Forbes Designs is the supplier.
okay,
Um,
okay,
in general, lumber yards are going to be similar in terms of the product.
right,
Um,
thank you.
So at this stage, we actually identify a manufacturer for the windows. We've had conversations, I guess you all know that we presented to the Historic Preservation Commission, and they were enthusiastic about the project. One of the things they require is that replacement windows or windows that are being put in the historic portion need to be wood.
Right,
All the ones in the back will be aluminum clad, for instance.
right,
So we specify all of that in the schedules so that the estimate can be based on those choices.
and what are we doing with these existing windows in here?
We're gonna put a energy panel on the inside,
Okay,
which will give better insulation
right,
and will not disturb its appearance from the outside.
but are we doing any re-glazing or cladding or caulking or anything with the existing frames and windows?
Yes, this, in addition to the drawings, we produce a outline specification that we're
Right.
giving to the cost estimator. And one of the things is that these are being reconditioned
Right,
so that if there are sash cords that are not working, they get repaired.
right,
And of course, everything gets painted.
great,
So
thank you.
May I ask a follow-on question to that? For the, I noticed that the windows will be rehabilitated so that they can all open,
yes,
but the interior storm window, would that be able to be opened and closed?
it's removable.
It's removable.
I don't know how often you open these windows.
Probably never, but I was just curious.
Yes. No, it would be a removable panel. So yes, it is removable, but it's not hinged. So it's removable. We haven't selected the actual, in a recent historic house that we did, there was a seal. So it was a friction fit and then it could be pulled out.
Mhm.
So
But then do we have anywhere to store like all these windows, panels, if we
they
take
would,
them out?
well, hopefully you would leave them in. That's the whole point.
Right.
Right.
So
It's more energy efficient, I'm sure,
Right.
to leave them in. So I know this is going to sound ignorant, but I'm still curious. What's the point then of making the windows fully operable? Is it simply to restore their historic operability?
well, I actually didn't know the answer as to whether or not you open these windows or would like to open them.
Right,
I assumed that you did. So I assumed that we would make them operational.
Mhm.
If you want to seal them, that might be a decision that you could make during the working drawing stage of this job.
right,
So there are a lot of things that can be modified from what has been assumed
Mhm.
in the design development. And if you want to give us more information that might inform a different decision, we can do that.
Mhm. So just from your experience dealing with historic public buildings, do you have any recommendation or advice on that question? We don't have screens, so if we wanted to open them, I think we'd need screens, for example, which adds a whole level of complexity.
Yes. Well, first I must say that historic preservation commissions are very particular about maintaining windows if possible.
Right.
And they would like you to go to great lengths to not replace them with a contemporary window. So not that
Understood.
that's what you're suggesting.
No, no, not at all.
So that's clearly it's easier if you replace this with a vinyl window or something like that. It would perform better. But what we're trying to do is meet that historic goal. And then we're also trying to make it more energy efficient if there's a loose connection or there's a large gap, to address those things.
With the
And
interior
again,
storm.
with the intention of being able to open them. We could seal them, and that would be an option.
Okay, thank you.
Barbara, could you
Just, a similar vein, is there any reason we would need to open them legally, like fire escape or I don't know, some other thing?
No. The two egresses for this space currently, surprisingly, is that door and that door over there, not the largest door that you probably all entered the room in. That door is going to go away because it's going to be a bathroom behind it.
Right.
So the two exits from this room are going to be the one that's directly behind the mayor here, closest to me, and this one here. Those are the two exits. And they're sufficiently far apart for the diagonal of this room, which is how the fire department looks at it. So no, you don't need the windows for egress.
Cool, thank you.
So one of the things that was brought to our attention was the shallowness of the foundations. So one of the things that's incorporated in this set of drawings that will be part of the cost estimate is digging out underneath this portion so that there's more headroom, and to seal it from the inside, all the inside, and then seal up all of the vents that are around the outside of this building, which are right below grade. It's caused a lot of moisture to sort of come through, and there's humid air under there, and there isn't a good vapor barrier. So that work, in addition to reinforcing the supports of the primary members that are under here. So that's the historic portion. And then we're going to have a depth of about 3 feet. And in order to avoid underpinning of the existing stone foundation, we are holding back that about 2 feet. Underpinning involves supporting the walls if you're trying to lower the bearing level. Okay, next is the first floor plan.
And this, and I just noticed you're not assuming that this property will be fully sprinklered in these numbers or in these
No, we
plans?
are.
You are,
Yes, we're fully sprinklering the building with a wet sprinkler system.
okay,
I do want you to know that the building is not required to be sprinklered.
right.
It's 1 story, and the safety of the building doesn't require it, even because of it's an assembly occupancy.
It says under life safety 1, cost to install a sprinkler system have not been included in the cost table, but we're gonna price that at some point, I guess.
It will be in this new cost estimate. I'm
Okay.
not sure what you're reading from.
I'm reading from your plumbing, life safety, fire life safety system in the, whatever this is. Mechanical
9.5
system.
of 23, right?
Yes,
Or did he change it more if that's up? Oh,
This is
that's our
attachment
attachment.
one, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. Okay,
I'm sorry, that may be an error, but there's going to be a sprinkler
Okay.
system that protects it. One unfortunate thing is that because it's a commercial building and it's being sprinklered, requires a 4-inch water line from the street to the building,
oh, wow. What do we have now?
about a 1-inch.
1 inch?
Yeah.
Oh,
If this were a house,
right,
you could do a sprinkler system with an 1.5-inch line.
right,
It's the fact that it's a commercial building,
right.
4 inches is the minimum.
Okay.
But just to clarify, not required.
It is
A
not
sprinkler-
required.
A sprinkler system isn't required.
The system is not required. As soon as you elect to have a sprinkler system,
Then you
you need the
Have to,
4-inch line.
Have the fine
understood.
line.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Will all 3 levels, attic, the main floor and crawl space be sprinkled?
Yes,
Okay.
Greg, may I ask, my apologies. Nice to meet you,
yes.
by the way. Heard great things. Now that we understand that the sprinkler system is not required, can you help me understand, was that our decision? And we weren't, that was our decision. That was not recommended. Okay.
If I could just comment on that.
It's an important building in the community. So
is
the thought
indeed.
Was that protecting it was
Right.
the
Yeah.
rationale.
Yeah, I mean,
understood.
as a wood frame structure, fire is the greatest risk that this building faces of destruction.
Yeah, I will second that because I remember talking about it and it was like, we're gonna invest all this money in this building. It's historic, well over 100 years old. And we could have a fire in it and it'd be ridiculous. The whole building burns down before anybody figures out what's going on.
Understood completely. I was just curious of the kind of
Gotcha.
the genesis of
Yeah.
that. Thank you.
So Greg, I may have missed this. Do we have a sense of what that might add to our budget, that water line
Um,
increase?
Unfortunately, according to our civil engineering consultant, a 4-inch line coming off of the street requires an underground vault on your property, which is extremely expensive. It is for that reason and that he is proposing to have a hydrant added in front of the building, which he says is less expensive. Because you raised that question before, and that is the explanation that I have gotten. And I tried to, when I got your email, I tried to reach out to the civil engineer to get more clarity. There is a distance, I believe it's 100 feet, for the hose to go from the source of the water to the most remote part of the house, or the building in this case. One of the connections is going around like this, according to the fire protection plan that was developed. So that must be the rationale. It seems excessive to me,
The 4 inch,
as does the vault that is required. All I can say is that we'll look into it as this gets developed further.
I wouldn't want to pin you down on this, Greg, for sure, but just if you could venture a guess to the additional cost. I assume this has not been taken into account in anything that we've seen at this point. If you could, in your experience, historical buildings, that typical infrastructure, what is the ballpark? Again, not holding you to that. I'm just curious.
to do which?
To do everything that needs to be done, whether it's the hydrants or the 4-inch line,
It's 2 different things. You're not gonna do both.
you're not going to do both.
Right.
Yeah, one or the other. Maybe it's an unfair question. Yeah.
No,
Well, to sprinkler a house
Both.
would be in the range of $30,000, but this is going to be considerably more. The vault itself, I think, is 20,000, something like that.
Is a vault like something that holds water? Is it a tank,
It's like a valve, I think, underground.
a valve?
Yeah, it's like a concrete pit with a lid.
Okay,
Um, I'm not. um, I'm not prepared to explain it in detail.
okay,
It may very well be that there will need to be a standpipe at the building that the fire department would then connect to. It's, but currently, and I don't understand this and I can't explain it to you, the civil engineering drawings do show both the 4-inch line coming in for the automatic sprinkler and the proposal to do the hydrant.
okay.
It seems belts and suspenders to me.
Okay,
And just to clarify process wise, because I imagine as you go through, a lot of these kind of budget questions are going to keep coming up. What we can expect in September
Yes,
from the group that has
Yes.
been provided essentially this,
yes,
are estimates for each
yes,
line item having to
Yes.
do with the project. Is that right?
that's correct.
And so that's when we get our first look at a real number for the total with a breakdown of cost for each
Yes,
part of this project.
yes.
Okay.
And one thing to clarify is that as part of the required submission for the mandatory referral to the county for this building, a landscape plan was developed and it's included in these documents. It will be an ad alternate. It's going to be separate from the rest of the estimate.
Right. There's the estimate for
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
And then
Yeah, for the plants and stuff, but
Right.
the sidewalk ramps and all that will be captured in the building cost.
Mhm.
So if I'm to understand correctly, if we had the hydrant, we could put in like a 2-inch water main instead of 4.
I'm speaking a little bit out of school, but I think typically you would have a fire department connection at the building. You would connect the hose from the hydrant to that point, and that would feed the sprinkler. I need to get more clarity on that, because as I say, it doesn't make sense for me to have both, and they
Right.
both were in the recommendation from the civil engineer.
but the
Do-
second choice requires a human being to come and connect it up to make it work. So if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, nobody's around, it doesn't just sprinkler systems in buildings I've built automatically turn on if there's a fire or smoke event, but this is not bad.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, can you check into that? Because I mean, I was in the fire department many, many years ago, but we always had systems that were both. So we had basically a smaller water main that came in, and then there was a flapper valve, and then the fire department could hook up when they got there, which would close the flapper valve and allow the pumper to pump water into the system for additional flow. But in the time it took for the alarm to go off and to the fire department to arrive, the smaller main was the thing that actually was attempting to feed the sprinkler heads.
Okay. I will investigate further.
Thanks.
The plan really hasn't changed since I last presented this. So we have both. If you could just go through the engineer is proposing to keep these existing HVAC units. They have another 10 years or so of useful life. They could be replaced. He thought, also in consultation with your maintenance staff, that George was saying that this system here is performing well. And what we're doing in the back is going to be better insulated, better windows. So the present system, and our engineer will do the calculations, will show that these units are sufficient to serve the new building. They can always be replaced in the future. One is going to be in the addition right here, access from a pull-down stair. And the existing one that's right there, that serves the historic portion, will remain. That allows us to use as much of the existing ductwork that serves this space, so we didn't want to redo things unnecessarily.
Is that existing system, how old is it? And is it entirely, is it gas and or electric combined?
Yes, it's gas and electric air conditioning. It's a split system, and the units are right here, right behind that wall.
Okay. Do you have any
Gas-
idea what year it was
I think
installed?
5 years old, something in that range.
They were made in 2021 because I actually looked at, one was made in March of 21, the other was made in
Yeah.
June of 21. So I
Yeah,
mean,
they're 4
somewhere in
years old,
21.
so
Okay.
they're relatively new. They're not state of the art. They're not the most the best sear and.
Right, they're
but
only 5 years
They're
old.
relatively new, so we didn't want to go to that expense,
Thank you.
so. um, The other thing is that the roof on this building is currently a little more than 15 years old, between 15 and 20 years old. And it's a 25-year roof. So one thing that we've done is we're putting in a new, they don't use the term 40 and 50 year, they use lifetime asphalt roofs now. But we're going to be using the higher quality asphalt fiberglass roof for the existing and the new. The other thing that we are planning to do, we presented to the Historic Preservation Commission what they wanted to hear, which was that we would preserve as much of the historic fabric on the outside of this building as possible. Unfortunately, you can tell that a lot of it is in very poor condition. In all likelihood, part of that has to do with the way the wall was built and the inability of the siding to breathe behind it. So for the purpose of the cost estimate only, we've instructed, the Historic Preservation Commission accepts replacement in kind if salvaging the material is not possible. We're going to take the worst case and we're going to replace it all. We're going to take it down to the sheathing, which we've discovered is a diagonal sheathing that's applied to these walls. We're going to put a weather resistant air barrier on top of the sheathing, and then a drainage rain screen mat behind the new siding. That will allow it to dry out properly. You won't get the same performance of the paint that you've experienced over the last 50 years. Because this is a historic building, wood will be used in the replacement here. On all the new work, both the siding and the trim will be a cementitious material.
Like a hardy plank.
It thicker than hardy so that it looks more authentic. But
Right,
yes. Mhm.
right. Cement, right.
Yeah.
Good.
Now, assuming the replacement of everything,
Mhm.
will we look
Siding.
siding, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
on the historic portion?
Yeah.
Any thought of putting insulation? Because I question whether there's really much behind these walls.
I've had conversations about that, and I've had some experience adding insulation to 100-year-old buildings. Sometimes you can do more damage because of the vapor drive that's in the wall. So if we do a complete removal of the siding in the end, we would have that opportunity. We could drill some holes in the sheathing and add insulation. The staff at the HPC said that we should be cautious about doing that because it can create a vapor drive issue.
so I guess that would preclude using like a styrofoam panel type insulation on the outside underneath the sheeting? All right, I'm sorry, not the sheeting, underneath the siding.
A rigid insulation.
Yeah,
That would have a lot of detailing consequences at the trims of the windows and extensions. That, although from an energy point of view, the continuous insulation would be a good idea. I would say, in order to keep the character of the building without adding another inch or more, you would insulate the cavity.
okay, thanks.
And Greg, I think we're going back to June now. We're testing my own memory, but I think that you said there was also a considerable advantage of allowing buildings of this age to breathe a bit, right? May I ask, just while we're on the topic, and again, forgive me for backtracking a little bit, on the roof, I thought I heard you say that the roofs had a useful life left, but we were going to add on top of that. And can you just talk me through the roofing again? Is that something that's required? Is that something that, do the roofs in their current state have useful life left in them?
Not much.
There's very little useful life left in this roof.
Right.
This roof is one of the thinnest asphalt shingles. And I think it's rated for, I'm pretty sure it's rated for 25 years, technically, but it's a diminishing. And I believe it's been at least 15 years. So there's somewhere around 5-7 years or something like that left in this roof.
Mm-hmm.
So since we're trying to match it,
Mm-hmm. Right.
we thought this was a good opportunity.
Okay. Thank you. That's helpful.
These are all elective things that you could, once we have a cost estimate, you can decide some of these decisions in light of that.
Right.
Remember, if you could just execute one more. So all the shingle and the trim will be original. The siding we're pricing as replacement. This board at the bottom is going to be PVC. We got permission from the HVC because it's so close to the grade. We're sealing openings that are allowing moisture and air, moist air to get in underneath. And we're sealing the crossways. The ramp is going to be redone and shortened. And that is the new door and the new window that will be part of the front facade. And then I think I mentioned next please. The siding here will be a cementitious. So will the shingle be a cementitious. All the trim is it's made out of fly ash. It's called boral, and it's much more stable than PVC, and doesn't have any rot or whatever. So it's easy to maintain, easy to paint. So at this stage, we would like to move forward with the detailed design. And the proposal that I have in front of you involves the work by the MEP engineer, the structural engineer, and ourselves for the construction documents phase of the project. I've also put in proposed fee for the bidding and the construction phase, but you're not deciding on that tonight.
So would you start on the detailed design, I guess upon the execution of the contract, the estimate, the cost breakdown comes to us in September. Does it, I mean, I'm not envisioning, well, who knows, right? We're looking at the cost, we're making decisions. Well, maybe we don't do this, maybe we do this. Does that add to your timeline on the detailed design? Because we're doing those things concurrently.
We're gonna try to manage that process so that we concentrate on things that
You know.
are not likely to change.
Sure.
But we thought it was worth that risk on our part
Right.
to move
To keep things
forward.
moving.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, we're expecting to see the estimate at the end of August.
Right.
And then presenting it to you at the September meeting.
Right.
Which I guess is the 9th of September or the 8th of September.
Yeah.
So, originally we were going to wait
Yeah.
until the estimate, but this is an opportunity to, it was first introduced to us by the civil engineer that wanted to get a lot of the site things tend to drive the schedule.
Yeah.
So that's why you approved that work
Yeah.
formally or
Okay.
previously. Well, I'm available for questions, I guess, if that would help or.
I've got just two more quick questions. I'll send you the other stuff later, but at one point we had talked about moving the electric meter over to the other side of the building.
Yes.
And what happened with that?
The electricity is gonna run underground
Right,
from the pole, right? Gonna come down. If we were to put it over here,
yeah,
we would be trenching along this side of the building. It's about 2 feet, less than 2 feet.
right.
And it would be very costly to not do it by excavation. And if you excavate, you're gonna damage these trees. So what we did was, we did agree that the electrical panel would be great if it was over there because you could add solar or other things at that location. So what we've decided to do in this current proposal is to bring it underground to where it is coming in currently, which is right over there. It will then drop down, go over here, and the panel will be over here.
So couldn't we do the same thing, put it on that corner?
On that corner?
Yeah,
We could, but it would be visible from the street.
okay.
The other element that was discussed in terms of abandoning the notion of just doing the south side is that trenching might also have implications for the stability of the foundation, as I recall.
I mean, they have methods of tunneling, but it's, didn't seem necessary. I will look into the fire hydrant issue and the sprinkler issue, because I know, part of this is a, authorization to have the civil engineer pursue the fire hydrant, application if that's necessary. So we will certainly make sure that it's necessary and that there isn't a choice to be made there before doing that.
This may be a
Yeah.
question for Barb, but it mentions the AVE networks. Preliminary estimate of $100,000 for AV security and communication.
Yes, so earlier on, we brought in a AVE Networks. It's an AV consultant and supplier. And we discussed various options of, whether you'd have the screen, whether you'd have projection, what you would have in the accessory room, what you would have here. And the $100,000 captures two proposals that were made that give the town some options. We felt that was a good placeholder at this stage.
Sure.
Further discussion needs to be had as to exactly what your needs are, but we felt that would cover.
Right, we're not going to
cover the
compete
expense.
that.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, and if there are any further questions or discussions with respect to understanding the design development or questions aimed at our next order of business, which is authorizing preparation of construction documents. Do we want to move to that and simply have Mr. Wiedemann available as a resource? I think the discussion of design, development, construction, a little artificial, but we do need to have a specific action with respect to the construction documents.
The construction documents, as most of you know, I'm sure, are the documents that are used for final bid and for securing the building permit and all necessary approvals prior to construction.
And you're saying that'll be done in January?
Yeah, something in that.
And we will review those prior to them being issued out, or how's that working?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
A decision should be made as to process of how feedback is given to us as we develop the final drawings, how we get answers. We have made decisions down to faucets and plumbing fixtures, and it's all in these documents as a placeholder. We don't know, we don't know if those choices are the appropriate ones we think they are. So there needs to be a methodology by which we can get interim approvals. And we can do that by presenting to the council or some committee that the council creates at your discretion.
Great.
All right, to get the next item on the table for discussion, I will entertain a motion to authorize contract with Wiedemann Architects for the construction document phase services for town hall renovation.
What's the cost?
I'm sorry,
The cost of this?
it's 124, 450.
Well, I will move that we authorize the expenditure of 124,450 for development of the construction documents.
It's been moved. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Very good. It's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion of the motion to authorize proceeding with construction documents? Nothing? That's,
I'll move to
And-
authorize going forward with construction documents.
no, we've got it
I
on the
Did that.
table.
So what else do you need?
Just if there's any discussion, questions, discussion of any,
Yeah, I had a question. I do a fair amount of work in solar. When we get permitting, a lot of times will apply for what we think is the largest type of footprint or project, and then we can scale it back. Is that the way it works with the preservation group that you're working with? Is it, in other words, are we taking a step here by authorizing these construction documents? And I may be the only one who doesn't know this, but as we move forward, are we then taking a irreversible step in kind of changing what we're looking at? Not that I'm proposing that at all. I'm just trying to understand what this step is, what this commitment is. We're authorizing these construction drawings. Can those drawings then, do you understand what I'm kind of inelegantly getting at?
Essentially, the historic preservation,
Do you want these back up or?
the Historic Preservation Commission has seen the exterior elevations that I was just presenting to you.
Mhm.
It is those that have been approved. If there is a substantial departure from what they represent, you would have to go back and get that approval. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to build upon earlier stages. So as you proceed into construction documents, you're narrowing down the amount of changes as you proceed.
And these are analogous to 30% drawings, 40% drawing, where these are 50% drawings. And what would necessitate a significant departure that you referred to? If, for
It
example,
looks different,
if it looks different.
you know, I mean, they got, the Historic Commission actually was talking about whether that was hardy or not, that was being proposed for the addition. And they favored a product that was thicker. So we've specified one that is thicker. And we were hoping that when we submit the final drawings, that would address that comment, for instance. So it can be detailed like that. So we're trying to guide you through decisions in as systematic a way as we can, so that you're making decisions that don't require going back to former approvals.
And your guidance is hugely helpful, you know, especially for me coming on here. But for example, so you talked about if it looks different. So I'm just using two examples, you know, the boring work that we're doing in the foundation, that would not look different.
Yeah, that would have no effect on
The roof, if we wanted to defer, I'm not suggesting we should, but if, for example, we decided to defer it because there's 10 years left of useful life, that would not
That's right.
necessitate a change. It would, am I right about that?
That's right.
Okay.
Roof replacement actually doesn't require the commission to decide if you're replacing it in kind, which is essentially what you'd be doing. So
Okay.
that particular example would not trigger it. Putting in vinyl windows, I don't know.
It's a no-go.
If it's just changing the massing, or, you know, the size, shape, and
Or if we decided to put on external storm windows, something like on this
Yeah.
portion. Things of that nature.
Or a ballroom.
Well,
the good news is the Maryland Historic Trust did not require an easement onto this property, so we're dealing with the county instead of the state, and there's no jurisdiction on the inside.
Okay, that, I
There's an
mean,
interest, but there's no
yeah.
authority.
I mean, that answers my question. I think it, you know, if someone were looking, if the commission were looking from the outside, as long as that is not going to change, then we would not have to revisit and
That's
take
right.
that back. Okay, so we
So
are
they're
still,
concerned about the floor that you choose here, or the tile there, or really, they're interested in preserving it, but they have no authority.
Is the Maryland Historic, and this may be a question more for Barb, is the Maryland Historic Trust aware that we're receiving state grant funding?
They are actually, if
Okay.
you're receiving state funding, you go through a process that's referred to as the clearinghouse, where all state agencies have the opportunity to comment on the project. That's where Greg was saying MHT did review the project and elected not to put an easement on the property.
Okay, thank you. I have a minor question. There was a reference to the design for the AV as being designed on a design build basis. I didn't quite understand what that means. Does that mean that it's essentially an additional cost should we choose to ask you to do it, or that we should have as part of the RFP for the construction bid?
What that means is, we've identified a company that we feel would be well suited to serve your needs. So.
To do what?
The AV
to
design.
the AV system for you,
Oh, audio visual.
yes.
Okay.
They'll spec if there's a television, or if there's a projection, or all of that. So as a design build contractor, the town would work with that company
have them both design and
Those different
install?
And actually do the
Ah, okay, thank you.
and the install would be would be overseen by the general contractor. And we would coordinate that work. But we're not experts in audiovisual, and you don't really need a separate consultant. You really need somebody that's in the business.
But it could also be bidded out
Yeah,
if we wanted,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we move to a vote on authorizing the contract for construction documents? All right. Let me just make one observation. So a month from tonight, we will be talking cost estimates. Our authorizing this evening, proceeding with construction documents, does not preclude a certain amount of what is, I believe, referred euphemistically as value engineering. At that juncture, or later junctures when we actually get bids. It becomes easier or more difficult depending on a variety of factors, including time. But the fact that we are authorizing construction documents tonight does not preclude that kind of exercise once we get figures. Okay. Any other questions, discussion? All right, we will move to a vote. All in favor of authorizing a contract in the amount of $124,450 for Wiedemann Architects to proceed with the construction document phase, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Leila can help you. It just goes back. up.
Mayor, I do have a question that's unrelated to the contract, but to the next steps for the town.
Yes.
Mr. Wiedemann raised the issue of the decision-making process, particularly for the interior finishes. And so I was wondering, I know you were seeking some volunteer resources. And I know we have the Historic Preservation Committee at our, potentially at our disposal. So I just wondered, is that a discussion we want to have at a future meeting? Or do you already have a concept in mind for how to guide those phases of decision making?
No,
for
I
interior
don't.
finish?
I put my concept forward earlier. So that's up to the council.
Yeah, at some point, we're gonna need somebody to approve every piece of equipment
A
that we're
million
gonna
decisions.
buy, and every cabinet front, and every dishwasher, and sink, and water fountain, and somebody's gonna have to say, yes, we want that one, or no, we want that one. So it's just something to think about for the future. We're not there yet.
Well, and some of it. may
Well,
not
we're
dictate
gonna
the
be there
cost.
pretty quick.
Right. I mean, he's put placeholders already for the cost estimate in.
Notably rather high-end placeholder.
Yeah,
So it seems like a
Well-
small committee would be ideal.
That way the surprises are more
Right.
pleasant.
No,
It's better to go, I agree. But you, in terms of the volunteer solicitation you did put out, you didn't,
Peter
outcome was not
Peter
finding
Benjamin
something.
came forward,
Okay.
and I have taken advantage of his kind offer, but I still think we need more specialized architectural background review.
it seemed, I mean, I think I don't remember what our solicitation looked like, but I'm not sure whether it specified and made clear that the interior finishes were a major part of the decision-making. So perhaps some targeted outreach, particularly maybe to the Historic Preservation Committee membership, might be worthwhile.
But you're talking like interior design.
Right.
yeah, somebody's gonna pick.
Yeah, to see if we have, right, you know, the fixtures for the bathroom.
Right.
Do you want them to look antique?
Right.
You know,
You want them to
there are a
be
lot of
lighter.
decisions there, right? A lot of headaches for somebody.
If we limit it to decor choices, I have no doubt we'll get lots of highly qualified responses. I think it needs to be a little broader than that.
But would the same people be qualified, like you're two
Right.
different expertise, right?
I think we need to delineate between the interior decor and some of the more, some of the other aspects of.
Well-
of
Technical
design,
aspects.
Technical aspects, electrical, mechanical.
Like
I suspect that those.
the nature of insulation for this room and things of that nature. Yeah. The solicitation is still up on the board. We haven't taken other steps to continue that process. We can take that down and revise it and go out again.
Have we received any interested folks?
Just Mayor Benjamin.
Okay, all right, great.
But I do think that the original solicitation put out some pretty strong language about seeking someone with architectural background.
Yeah.
And for the finished decisions on the interior, that's not necessarily the only background that would be appropriate. So maybe we could do a separate solicitation for that particular set of decisions.
Somebody with more interior design.
Right, because there definitely are people in town who have backgrounds that would be suitable for that kind of volunteer committee, a committee of maybe two.
I think that makes sense. I think it's two different.
It's two different
Lots of
skill sets
expertise.
potentially.
And I certainly understand needing assistance with the more technical aspects. But I don't think you're going to get the person who does both, who also has the eye for interior design.
Yeah, not necessarily.
So it may make sense to put another one out with that focus.
I would agree. No, I think you're 100% right. I mean, need somebody with that artistic eye or on interior design to go through all the finishes, knobs, fixtures, blah, blah, blah.
It's gonna be a million decisions.
Well,
Whereas-
and probably a small team.
Somebody.
Very small.
Right. A team, another smaller group to go through the technical aspects of things like the air conditioning system or maybe the plumbing, who knows, we'll see, but stuff like that would be a different team, I would think.
And hopefully when we get to the point where we have subcontractors, the idea would be to have the subcontractor submit value engineering changes to the plans and specs with some cost saving opportunities, and then somebody's got to review and approve those kinds of design changes to the actual contract documents.
Okay,
mean-
so it's the sense of the council that we should again seek voluntary assistance with these and make clear that it includes design elements as well as
Interior
technical.
finishes. Mhm.
Okay,
And colors and, all of that.
Right.
Right.
how would you like to proceed on that? Shall I just take the old one, revise it and circulate it for your comments?
Does that work for you? I gave you the first start for the last one. I'm happy
You
to
did, yes.
redo it if you want.
Do you want to go first again or?
I'll be happy to.
Okay, good. So,
And I would think it's like, we're looking for expertise in two areas.
Yeah.
One, kind of construction and architecture, two, interior design. And that one's might be kind of fun, personally.
Yeah,
Like, I think you would get volunteers.
huge amount.
Is it two separate solicitations? Is it, the first as it went out originally, and then the second one is very specifically to the interior design questions? Because or do you see one solicitation kind of delineating those two?
Yeah. I mean, I think we could do one advertisement, but make it clear that we're looking for two
Yeah.
separate small committees.
Subcommittees, really. Right.
It might be confusing if we put two separate ones out.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Great. Thanks for doing that.
All right. Um, anything further on town hall? We'll move then to the next item on the agenda, which is contract authorization for fall leaf collection services. Barbara?
Okay, thank you. So in September of 2023, the town council awarded a 3-year contract to Bethke Landscaping for once-a-week leaf removal. Those services are provided for a 2-month period. And the current contract that we have in place covers 2023, 2024, and 2025. The cost for this calendar year will be $31,300. I was in touch with Beth Key about a different matter, and during the course of that discussion, they asked whether or not we wanted to add on a couple years to the extension opportunity. So when the service was bid out in 2023, their price quotation, in addition to pricing for that 2023, 2024, and 2025, there was also an optional 1-year extension with a slight price increase. At the time the council awarded the contract, you only awarded for 2023, 2024, and 2025. The 2026 1-year extension pricing has an associated cost of $32,239. When those of you who were here talked about this in the fall of 2023, Kayla had indicated that we would bring this matter back to you to decide if you wanted to exercise that option or if you wanted us to bid the service out. So we have pricing for 2026 as part of the price quotation on which the current contract is based. During my discussions with Beth Key, they offered to hold the 2026 price if the town was interested in a new 3-year contract for 2027 and 2028. You recently passed a procurement, new code chapter in the code, a procurement ordinance. Kayla and I talked about this. I think you do have the authority to enter into a 3-year contract with Beth Key for 26 through 28 if you wish. Specifically, there's a section in the new procurement ordinance that states that any requirement for competitive bidding imposed by this ordinance may be overridden for good cause by a majority vote of the town council. Included in the agenda packet is some history about the town's bidding out of this service. So when it was bid out in 2019, we got bids from Beth Key as well as one other company. Beth Key was the lower bid. We obviously had some staff turnover, and so we realized that in 2022, basically we did not have a valid contract that was in place. So we came to the council at that time after soliciting informal price quotations for a 1-year contract. We received pricing from the same 2 companies who submitted bids in 2019, and Beth Key once again submitted the lower price quotation. When the service was formally bid out in 2023, we received only 1 bid, and that was from Beth Key Landscaping. So I think you have another number of options here. Either you can direct staff to go out and bid. I did want to provide some history of what we've seen when we've gone out to bid because the landscape isn't looking that great based on what we've seen in recent years. You could decide to just extend the contract with Beth Key for 2026, which is the optional 1-year extension that was already included in their bid. Or you could elect to enter into a new 3-year contract with Beth Key for 2026, 2027, and 2028.
That's at the 2025 pricing?
So they held their pricing for 23, 24, and 25. There would be a 3% increase for the optional 1-year extension in 2026, and they agreed to hold their 2026 pricing for 27 and 28.
I'd like to just point out that I'm pretty sure that that $1,000 increase from 25 to 26, we'd spend many times that amount in staff costs to rebid this contract.
We agree with you, and I think without much likelihood that we're going to get a lot of competitive bidding. We've been with Bethke, I don't have some of you have obviously lived in town for a very long time, but I think we've been with them 25, 30 years or something like that. I think sometimes when you've had a very long-term vendor, I do sometimes think that other vendors look at that and question whether or not you're going to go with somebody else anyway.
Are you happy with the quality of their work?
We have been. I mean, I think certainly every year, when fall rolls around, last year, for example, everyone may recall, it seems like the leaves just suddenly dropped like one weekend. And, that obviously created some challenges for Bethke. I think Kayla's talked to them, I've talked to them when we get calls or emails from residents expressing their concern. I think it's one of those services that probably not everyone is always going to be 100% happy with, but I would say we get very few complaints from residents about it.
What are the complaints you get? Just generally?
Generally, I've had my pile out here and why hasn't someone come and picked it up? That's almost entirely
Yeah, I
what
do
it's been.
remember some listserv traffic about that last year in a
Mhm.
few spots. Apparently, they felt like they had been missed for more than a week.
Yeah, and that there were a few streets. What we did in that case is we just reached out to their office administrator, who is generally who we deal with. Basically, they'll relay that information if they still have someone out in the field and try to get them to swing by. There's obviously a capacity issue, so they do have to dump the leaves. But I think generally they've been very responsive. But I think, Jerry, I think you nailed it. Occasionally there's hey, it's been a week and I've had it out here.
And they turn those into mulch, is that right?
They take them, there's a designated place that they need to take them.
Okay.
I mean, there's a couple locations, but it has to meet certain standards, and it's my understanding from them.
I would think it would be a valuable byproduct, is the reason I bring it up.
Well,
Oh.
Yeah,
that
they do get composted.
the
Okay.
county sells that leaf grown.
Well, let's get this on the table for discussion.
Hey, Chris,
Because if we're going to go that far afield, I have an observation. It's the
Chris?
staff recommendation, and I will entertain a motion. authorize-
Chris,
Yeah.
before we do that, I just have a procedural question.
Yeah.
If in fact we're going to do this as a no bid contract, do we need to vote to say that we want to have this contract as a no bid? Is that,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
so
and-
would
and I
we
thi-
do that first? Or am I,
No, it'll be part of the motion.
okay. Thanks.
So I will entertain a motion to authorize a 3-year contract with Bethy Landscaping for once-a-week leaf removal services for 2-month period in the falls of 2026, 27, and 28 in the amount of $32,239 per annum, which motion will also incorporate the necessary waiver of the requirement that we enter into competitive bidding under Chapter 13, Article 2, Part 2 of the Town Code. So that'll be one motion that incorporates the waiver of the requirement for competitive bidding. Do I hear such a motion?
I'll make the motion.
A second?
I'll second it.
All right, it's on the table for discussion.
The only thing I was going to say is, and I don't know a whole lot about leaf removal, but they're contracted to remove the leaves once a week for 2 months. And there are people saying they didn't have their leaves removed for over a week. I mean, I get it, like, things happen, they'll fall at the same time, but it's a 2-month contract with one very specific job, removes the leaves once a week. I'm not questioning, I mean, I like the idea that we have a longstanding partnership with them. I would lean maybe towards 1 year and then see about bidding it out again. But if overall people are happy with them, that's fine. It just caught my attention that for 2 months, they remove leaves every week, and yet there's people saying that they didn't get their leaves removed.
I think that's a great point. Just 2 observations. So the first is I am a big I am an advocate of locking in price where we can. But the second one is to Chris Deutsch's point, which is, do we have any, if we are getting complaints halfway through this 3-year contract, is there anything that we can do? I mean, I could see a company getting complacent. Oh, we got 3 years, we're not getting a bid for a while. Not that would happen.
Yeah, that's not
Do we
been.
have any recourse?
I mean, you could say they're in breach of the contract. I would say I've been at this now for 39 years with some people contracting out, some not offering the service at all because it can be addressed through the private marketplace. It doesn't necessarily have to be a governmental service. And other cities I've worked in where they use their own forces. So where we've either had a contractor, any place I've worked, or we've used our own forces, I can't recall a single lease season where we ever got through without an expression of concern from someone. But I've never had the sense they've been complacent. You've talked to them as well. I think in some cases they do have, capacity limitations. So like I say, last year was really the year I remember where everything seemed like it fell all at one time. Certainly if the leaves are dropping more gently throughout the fall, it's a lot easier for them to keep up.
And if you're feeling like they're communicating with you in those cases,
Mhm.
so that you can then communicate with the town, hey, leaf removal might be
Yeah.
delayed this week, be patient, it's coming, then that's fine. So hopefully they're doing that.
So just kind of a quick comment. We have had hiccups where on our scheduled collection day, either rain that day or rain the day before does make the leaves harder to collect. So sometimes we do have that hiccup where if we have a couple of rainy days back to back,
Yeah.
it is unfortunate. You can't really collect it without jamming up the machine if you try and collect it wet. We do try and make sure that we message out of, hey,
Yeah.
it needs to dry a bit. Hey, here's the delay. There are, I think, sometimes frustrations that it's not a service on demand of like the minute you put out your leaves, someone's there. I would love to be able to offer that. I am a little scared to ask Bethke what pricing for service on demand would look like. And I think you all would be concerned at that contract size.
So Barb, just a quick question on complaints. I mean, have the complaints differed from year to year, or are they all basically the same quantity and type? Or
No, I think definitely and I do want to emphasize, this is not a case where we're getting, a dozen calls every single day during leaf season. That has never been the case. Last year stood out just because I think of the way the leaves fell. I think the other thing is for a lot of people, they put their leaves out into the street and then if they're not picked up immediately, they can't park there. So I think that's part of the concern, but I think Kayla is correct. I mean, one of the things, I know I've talked to a resident and said it's not an on-demand service. I mean, they get to people as soon as they can. Certainly if there's, the rare instance where there's been, an entire block of a street missed or in some of our smaller streets, that's something we have, we'll call Bethke about and they will get in touch with someone who's still out in the field or they have responded pretty promptly to pick those up. But in the interest of full disclosure, it's not we never receive a complaint about the service. But I think that's not uncommon.
so basically speaking, it seems like the residents are relatively satisfied. You're going to get that average handful of people
Mhm.
who will call to complain about some odd reason, which may or may not have been part of their own doing.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily have a sense, Phil, that it's of their own doing. I mean, I think it is in some cases when I can recall one instance last year when I checked with Bethke about a particular street, they start very, very early in the morning and then they're running back and forth. So if they've gone down your street and you come out later in the day and that has happened, because they'll say, look, we talked to the driver, he was down this street at this particular time. There was nothing there at this particular address. That probably just means somebody had the opportunity in the morning to go out and rake before they went to work or before they went about their business, but Bethke's already been by. So I don't want to say that there's been, any issues that aren't without merit. I think certainly, there have been some streets that for whatever reason, maybe miscommunication between the different drivers out in the field or whatever. But I certainly think that overall people seem pleased with the service based on the number of calls that we get or don't get, as the case may be.
Thanks.
Just one clarification. So the yard waste pickup that happens the rest of the year is a separate contract, is that correct?
That's part of our contract with ecology, correct?
Okay,
It's just leave.
That's correct.
right, okay.
All right, is it the sense of the council that we want to vote on a 3-year contract or substitute just a 1-year extension?
I don't want to speak for everyone's behalf, but I'm comfortable with 3 just because I think prices in general are rising. To the extent that we can lock in expenses for 3 years,
Yeah.
I think that would be
Give it-
advantageous for us.
I agree. And given what we went through with the fuel increases with our trash collection contract
Yep.
last year and the year before, I agree.
Given that they're communicating, I think
Yeah.
that that's really.
Yeah,
important.
good
Yeah.
communication is key.
I
I-
think
Yeah,
to the question about the nature of complaints, I think certainly in my 30 plus years in elective office, they don't change. Here's the one thing that has changed. Typically, people would rake their leaves to the curb over the weekend. And so there would be complaints if the pickups were consistently late in the week. With so many residents now contracting with landscape maintenance firms, there is no sort of calendar element, weekly calendar element, much less of one. So the day of the week that it gets picked up is much less of a concern for residents. And to your point, we used to have the leaves deposited in town where they would just naturally decompose and people could mine them for compost. Now they are taken to a facility. I assume Bethke uses the facility that the county provides, and then they sell it back to us as
Bring
leaf-
back the good
leaf-
old days. 'cause
as
we-
leaf grow, which is a
Yeah,
terrific product.
it is. Or we go to Ace and we. spend
We could
$10.
explore the possibility. I asked Barb to check of having them dump the leaves in a location in town where they could just naturally decompose. Apparently Bethke is not keen on that. I don't know why they want to pay the cost in time and energy costs to drive to wherever they deposit them. But
I suspect that they sell it. I think that they probably sell that valuable mulch and that's a revenue for them.
I don't
well,
know
no,
if
it's the county that does the
county
leaf
sells it to
grow.
us. Right, but the leaf contractors don't get money from the county for delivering their leaves.
Hmm.
We vote on 3 years?
Well, that was the motion, unless there's sentiment to
No, I second.
change it. All right, any further discussion? All right. All in favor of the authorizing the 3-year contract with Bethke Landscaping in the amount of $32,239 per annum, which vote will also waive the requirement for competitive bidding.
Because we have
Signif-
identified a good cause. I just want to insert
I'm
that.
sorry?
Because we have identified a good cause in
Yeah,
terms of
yeah,
cost
yeah.
effectiveness.
Yeah. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Very good, thank you. The next item for action is introduction of ordinance number 2025-6, establishing a Parks Advisory Committee.
Mayor Keller? If I,
And the version circulated
that's what I was just about to say.
did not reflect changes that were agreed to in June before we
Yeah.
realized we couldn't vote on it.
Yeah, if,
Have these been
No, I think they're simple enough, I
Okay.
think. Yeah, so if I
Right.
may, I got a new desktop and a new laptop, and doing that the week before a town council meeting during agenda packet preparation is never a good idea, is the lesson I learned. So if you look at attachment 1, which was the clean version, the mayor is correct. The two changes that I believe are missing is if you look at section 114C. The sentence that currently reads, every effort should be made to ensure that the committee's membership reflects the diverse users of the town's parks and open spaces, including families with young children, teenagers, adults, and seniors. What you had directed at your last meeting was after adults, it was supposed to say pet owners. So that's the version control issue. The word pet owners is missing there. And then if you go down to what is now in attachment 1 subsection G, you had directed at the last meeting that section regarding adjunct members should be deleted. And then in H, duties of the committee, subsection 1, what you had directed was that it should read, the committee shall advise the council with respect to town-owned parks and open spaces on issues including safety, playgrounds, recreational and educational possibilities. And what's missing is and prioritization of are the two words that are missing, potential improvement. So I apologize for the version control issue.
Okay, so the red line version is correct.
It is,
The
what,
clean
right,
copy is not.
correct.
Yes.
It out.
The handout
Yes.
is simply a clean copy for purposes of a motion.
I don't see H unless I'm missing something here.
I think
go-
1 and 2 is what H is supposed to be, right?
I don't know.
Isn't there?
Yes.
Was deleted.
No, it was G, yeah,
Okay.
it was G under where it talks about adjunct members is what you deleted.
Deleted.
And under H, duties of the committee on 1, the word prioritization of potential improvements is what unfortunately did not make it into the packet.
Okay,
But the mayor just passed out.
great.
Sorry, I'm looking at space here.
I'm
Sorry.
thinking.
I'll make a motion to introduce, we're
Yeah.
introducing, correct? Introduce the amended version of the ordinance.
All right. It's been moved and seconded that we're adding section 114 to the town code, establishing a Parks Advisory Committee in the form just circulated this evening. Any discussion?
If we look at C, and I'm going to go to the second line towards the end, it's got, well, it says, every effort shall be made, and then it lists things, families, seniors, pet owners. But then we've got a separate one that says every effort shall be made as reflective of, isn't that kind of the same thing?
Well,
Where are you?
unless you can tell me what age cohorts and household composition mean, I think they're redundant.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I think the second sentence also talked about geographic representation, which is a little bit different than diversity.
Oh, I see.
Well, couldn't we just add that to the first one and,
It could be one sentence.
right?
Or just after pet owner comment, as well as geographic
Right.
diversity. Geographic representation. That's the only additive concept that I see in there.
Right.
Yeah, I think the intent when we made that edit was that it would be ultimately replacing both sentences with one all-inclusive sentence. So I'm in agreement with that.
And did we get rid of one of the shall on the first line to be should? When it says every effort shall be made, I noticed on the second one is every effort should be made.
My recollection, I'm not saying Phil it was perfect, is that there was some much more discussion about the second part because it was worded differently originally. I think it was said committee membership shall be reflective or something to that degree. I don't recall much discussion about the shall in the first sentence that you cited.
I think the spirit of it, Phil, the way it is now is reflective of what we were looking to do because what we had talked about in June was this idea that the first part is every effort shall, and then the second is almost a command. And there may be scenarios where we're not able to fulfill that, right? And so incorporating every effort should be made, I think is what was addressed there, if I remember correctly, going back to
That's,
June.
yeah, my recollection is that Mayor Keller had accurately pointed out in terms of the second sentence, is that he's somewhat, he can only deal with whoever applies and he can't necessarily control who chooses to apply to serve on the committee.
If we're making a single sentence out of the whole thing by adding the geographic to it, then wouldn't we make the whole thing a should instead of that first shall?
That's certainly up to you all.
I mean, to me, it would, because the other problem is you hem yourself in terms of whoever applies.
So are you suggesting, Phil, it should be, just I'm trying to take notes, every effort, I'm using the first sentence, every effort should be made to ensure that the committee's membership has geographic representation and reflects the diverse users of the town's parks and open spaces on,
Well,
is that correct?
Keller had said that, well, first of all, the should is, I agree with that, but then Chris Keller suggested that where you get to the point where it says adults, seniors, and pet owners, that we add at the end of that.
Well, wherever you tack it on,
Well, yeah, I don't care. Let them tack it on.
geographic representation
Right.
would be added to the first sentence and then just strike the next.
Right.
I'm comfortable with that change.
And I think it's wise to have should because if we get 5 responses and they aren't right down the line along with reflecting each of these elements, and the law says shall, what do we do? Re-advertise, turn people away? I think as a pragmatic matter, there are only so many people who are going to come forward.
Makes sense.
Can we just?
That's where I was coming from. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. Can we just read it as it would? I just want to make sure that I'm keeping up. So every effort shall be, and that will continue to include that the committee's membership is reflective of the town's demographics, but not limited to age cohorts, household composition, and have geographic representation. Is that?
I think they're saying strike that sentence.
We're striking that sentence. And
Here's what I understand, and I think I'm hearing different things about shall and should.
Mhm.
But every effort, either shall or should, be made to ensure that the committee's membership has geographic representation and reflects the diverse users of the town's parks and open spaces, including families with young children, teenagers, adults, seniors, and pet owners.
And
And
then
that
what
would
about
be
the demographics?
What I'm hearing is there's a suggestion that be stricken, that entire second
You know,
sentence
I
be
think at the last meeting, there was a discussion that the families with young children, teenagers, and adults and seniors replaces the age cohort,
I see.
and household
It would just be
demographic
redundant.
composition is
I
redundant.
see.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're just making changes so as not to be redundant. Is that right?
correct, yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
And what is the consensus on the shall or the should in that remaining sentence?
I was hearing should as. the
Should,
That's what
yeah.
I thought I heard. I just wanted to make sure. Okay.
I think the every effort covers you either way, but
Yeah.
shall be the word.
Yeah.
I mean, I think as long as the mayor goes around door to door and invites everyone to volunteer for the committee, every effort will have been made.
That's right.
Well, we certainly put a sign up in the dog park. Okay, so I'm going to make a command decision that we've reached consensus to modify the motion to change the wording of the second sentence of subsection C to read, every effort should be made to ensure that the committee membership has geographic representation and reflects the diverse users of the town's parks and open spaces, including families with young children, teenagers, adults, seniors, and pet owners, and to strike the following sentence in its entirety. Is that a fair summary of what we've agreed to?
Well done.
So unless
Agreed.
there's further discussion, can we move to a vote? All right, all in favor of introducing ordinance number 2025-6, establishing a Parks Advisory Committee, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you.
Mayor, I understand that there's been a change in the council member assignment for the Parks Advisory Committee. Is that worth noting, or is that something you're saving for your final remarks?
Well, we never had an organizing meeting. And so neither of our two new folks have any official duties, but Chris Deutsch expressed an interest and Lisa kindly agreed to relinquish her liaison position. So that is one change we have made de facto, if not de jure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Chris. And thank you for your service, both of you.
The next item on the agenda for action is introduction of ordinance number 2025-7, amending the street code concerning right-of-way tree protection and maintenance. Barb, would you like to begin?
Yeah, so you all have had a series of discussions dating back to January regarding amendments to the town's street code. The street code basically encompasses section 701 through section 719 of the town code. The last time you talked about this, you did introduce I'm sorry, getting my ordinances confused here. So there have been some changes. The last time you discussed this was in February. So for Councilmember Stroud and Councilmember Deutsch, this is kind of new territory for you. So there have been a series of changes since your last discussion in February. So included in the agenda packet, and hopefully I didn't have version control issues with this item, attachment 2 is a redlined version depicting what the changes, the proposed changes that were made since your discussion in February. I would say the most significant change was elimination of the definition of tree and section 702 definitions. For those of you who were part of the discussion back in February, you might recall that there was some difficulty in trying to come up with a definition for tree that encompassed everything that the group wanted protected. Thanks to Mayor Keller, who basically did a lot of work on this ordinance and had some back and forth with the town attorney. So that's probably the most substantive change from your last discussion. The other thing that we have done is added town rights of way to the definition of town parcel. You'll see that in a number of places. One of the things I learned through this process between Mayor Keller and our town attorney is that apparently shrubbery in the right of way also has some protection under the state permitting process.
What if the shrubbery is bamboo that we want trimmed or taken away?
One thing I need to check with the Department of Natural Resources, because they're the ones who grant us, we have some blanket permits with our 3 contracted tree service companies. So they are basically allowed to do work in town right of way because there's a blanket permit tied to that particular company. So I believe we could do that, but this was sort of a little bit new for all of us, that shrubbery was even covered by the DNR process. I'll confirm that with them and see if there's anything we need to do to amend
But it
that
says
permit.
no person shall break, wound, or destroy shrubbery. So I don't know how if our contractors are excluded from that definition.
Once again, it all gets back to who's allowed to do work under the roadside permits. I have not seen anything, because I'm the one who fills them out every year and submits them to DNR, that there's any delineation between trees and shrubbery in terms of what we submit. So I believe as long as the work is done by one of our contractors, I think it's likely okay with the state. And just as a reminder, we do have to file a report with the state every year indicating what work was done under these blanket permits, and those permits have to be renewed annually.
Okay.
Um,
So nobody can point to this and say you can't touch anything in my right of way that is blocking the roads or that we want removed because it says no person shall do anything.
I don't think that would be an issue because we also have other provisions in the code that also prevent someone from creating a sightline problem at an intersection. Before your next meeting, though, I will check with the person from DNR who's assigned. The other just substantive change is in the versions that you discussed in January and February. There was a reference to ordinance number 4. It said it was adopted in 1897. It was actually adopted in 1898 because that's when the town was incorporated. And in any event, that ordinance, based on some research that our former archivist did, it appears that ordinance was superseded and replaced by the current town code anyway, which is one of the changes we have recommended in this ordinance. I think more generally, stepping back from the changes that have been made since February, is one of the things this ordinance would increase the fine for a violation of Section 716 of the Town Code. This was something that the Arboretum Committee recommended. Currently, any violation of a provision in Chapter 7 is punishable by a fine of $100. For the more tenured members of the council, you may recall that the Arboretum Committee had recommended to increase that fine to the maximum allowed under the law for a municipal infraction, which is $1,000. This issue was discussed as part of a broader discussion regarding the codification and fines and penalties. And there was no objection raised by the council at that meeting back in December to increasing the fine to $1,000 as recommended by the Arboretum Committee.
I just wanted to stop you for 2 seconds on this. I was thinking that we should include this in the fine schedule, not, shall I say, hard coded into the ordinance. That way, if we decide we want to change it as we do with other things, we can change it.
Yeah, what is on your agenda coming up is not really fines. It's really more, it has to do with application fees and bonding requirements. You're correct, Phil, though, it might be a good idea just to have something on the website that takes all the fines because they're scattered throughout the code. And maybe just sort of has like a master summary chart that people understand what different penalties are affiliated with what fines.
Yeah, to that end, what was the plan with the code update related to that?
I took the information, the direction that you gave me back in December. That has been embedded. The new code draft, I'm currently reviewing it now. What Mayor Keller and I have discussed is placing that on your meeting agenda, assuming it's not as full as tonight's is, and just sort of walking you through that at your meeting in September, and then having that ordinance brought forward in October for introduction and then hopefully adoption in November. So we could start the new year with a new code.
Yeah, I thought that we had agreed, but maybe I'm mistaking it with the fee and bond schedule, but I thought we had agreed that there would be a separate schedule for fines, because that way we didn't have to change an ordinance. We simply had to do a resolution.
Yeah, I don't recall that part of the discussion. I'm not saying that my memory isn't faulty, but basically, typically the fines are embedded in the section of the code that addresses what a violation actually is. And just as this ordinance before you tonight for introduction sort of describes in some detail what someone can and cannot do. I think that's hard to summarize in a chart. We can certainly, though, post something that's, for informational purposes.
It was more along the lines of if we wanted to modify it, we didn't have to reintroduce an ordinance simply to modify a fine.
Yeah.
And we could, I mean, it could be simply referenced as, the name of this ordinance, fine, or whatever,
Yeah. Right now, it's all scattered throughout the code in the new code, so they would have to go and redo that work, which I imagine they would probably charge us for. But I think that's certainly your preference.
Councilmember Schultz, I'm wondering if you're perhaps thinking of the procurement ordinance where we did specifically carve out the ability for the town council to raise certain dollar thresholds via resolutions, that as we deal with inflation and other changing values, if you felt the need to raise the signing limit for the mayor or the town manager, that you could address it via resolution.
It's possible. And if so, if that is, in fact, my memory is faulty, then I would suggest for discussion that the council consider doing such a fee schedule as a way of being able to handle this stuff in the future, unless we don't want to.
I see your point, given that the rest of the code has all the fines embedded in the text, even in the amended version that's under development. Could we defer that decision to a later meeting? Because keeping it here now isn't really going to make a huge difference, because once we make that decision, we want it to apply across the code.
Yeah, the one
Right.
thing I'll say, if we get to the point of having to prosecute someone, typically as part of the evidence that is provided in court, in my experience, is the section of the code that specifically states that something is a municipal infraction and specifically states the amount. So to some degree, keeping the penalty tied to the actual language that states what a violation is can be helpful in court, because you're producing a chapter of the code as part of your filing with the court.
Okay. I mean,
So I'm not saying that's the only way to do it, but there is some advantage to that.
I have another. Sure. Could we go back to the discussion of shrubberies as being part of the DNR permit? Because I think this is more of an earth-shaking change than I first realized. So if shrubbery is now something that the resident is unable to prune on their own, then we would be taking on responsibility for pruning everybody's azaleas that they might have at the front of their yard. I think that's what we want to do.
Yeah, it was an interesting kind of back and forth that we had, because I have to admit, I've worked in Maryland for 21 years and I never thought about shrubbery. And this guidance from the town attorney came up because we had, truthfully thought about taking shrubbery out. And I'm probably just, I don't think this is
Well, Chris,
difficult. Basically, the town attorney made it clear, that it is part of the roadside tree law, but did clarify that obviously enforcement is a question.
the no person language is modified by any town parcel.
Right, but we redefined town parcel to include the right of way. And so I don't think we would want to do that. Originally, in the design of this section, we were separating out town parcels from right of way parcels. And we were focusing on trees in the right of way and on town parcels.
No, you're
but
right.
only shrubbery
No, you're
in
right.
town
You're right.
parcels. But if we amend the town parcel definition to include all right of way, then we're essentially saying no one can prune shrubbery in the right of way.
No, you're right.
Yeah. So I don't think that's really our intent. And even if the DNR permit includes shrubbery, I don't think that obligates us to enshrine that in our code.
A good point.
and tie a fine to it.
Trees and right.
Right. Our interest is to protect trees in the right of way.
Right.
We did have some interest in protecting, especially if we, like, say, shrubbery around town hall. We didn't want people coming in here and vandalizing
Right,
shrubbery around town hall. That was the intent of that section originally.
but not in the entire right of way.
Yeah, so
Right.
as we were going back and forth with the town attorney, his comment was that the separate provision on shrubs is retained. Um, Essentially, otherwise it may tend to suggest that right-of-way shrubs can be pruned if not planted by the town contrary to state law. But then went on to talk about how enforcement is done of the roadside tree law. His other comment was the attached draft, meaning the one that is largely before you tonight, will require the town to document who installs what shrubs in the right-of-way. So I think your comment, Jerry Lee, is, it is starting to sort of change that, no pun intended, landscape of how this works in town.
Well, in working with the language, I'd forgotten that rights of way were included in the definition of town parcel. I think we can strike that,
Strike what? I'm sorry.
Right.
rights of way.
Out of the definition of town
Mm.
parcel. Was that the only reason to add that in there, was because of the comment about the DNR permit that the town attorney raised? Barb?
I think his intention was that, a right-of-way is not a park, it's not a public recreation area. I guess you can have an argument whether it's an open space, it's not deeded, it's not an outlot or other green space, not.
Correct. So town, I believe our intent is to have different rules for the right of way than we do for town parcels. Originally, our intent was we want to protect shrubs on town parcels, but we don't want to govern shrubs in the right of way in front of private property.
Trees.
That was,
Protect
right,
the
trees,
trees
yes,
and right of way.
not shrubbery
Right.
in the right of way. That was the original intent. And if the only reason to make this change was because of the recognition that the DNR permit also governs shrubbery in the right of way, okay, we can't change the DNR, but we don't have to enshrine it in our code. That's, we're not obligated to add that to our code.
Do we fix it by removing rights of way from the definition of a town parcel?
We even have rights of way, see planting strips.
Yeah.
Or am I missing something here?
Why do we need planting strips separate from town parcel? I don't remember. I'm sorry.
It says, we've talked about this a couple times where we're saying right of way, but now I notice it's town parcels and
And
planting
planting strips.
strips.
Yeah, I don't remember why that addition was
I
made.
don't know.
Does anybody know what a planting strip is?
It's defined in the code.
It's defined.
Yeah, it means area shall mean those strips of land in town rights of ways which are not paved for vehicular use and which lie between the paved portions of said streets and adjacent private property lines.
So it's
Yeah.
I don't think we want to include planting strips then in the shrubbery conversation, at least in the town parcel.
Yeah, the shrubbery section was part of the February ordinance as well. I didn't go back to January yet.
Maybe establishing the intent and then first, and then kind of working back deductively from that. So the intent is to protect the trees, full stop, but not to preclude the residents to trim the shrubs in what they perceive kind of as their extension of land. That's
Right, the right of way that's immediately adjacent to their
Right, and then,
property.
does that make sense, Barb? Because if that's our intent, then, because I think there's a couple of competing definitions in here that need to be cleaned up. I don't know if it makes sense to do it tonight, but if we have the intention, maybe we can just kind of go back and figure out the best way to articulate it.
Yeah, I think I'm going back and looking at the January ordinance. I think the difference between January and February, which is when the shrubbery provision got added, is because there was some discussion in January, as I recall, about how to define trees and making sure that that definition at the time was broad enough to cover other things. And then I don't recall how it came up, but it was noted that the town has shrubs, the Waverly Triangle, for example, and
In the town's parcel.
And-
not
But
in
wouldn't
the-
that be considered a
not
town
in the
parcel?
right-of-way in front of people's houses. That's the.
yeah, that would be,
distinction
that would be considered, I think, a parcel. I'm not, I don't know, maybe a right of way. I'd have to look at the maps.
Some people be able to trim shrub and prune shrubs in their right of way in front of their house, but not go to town parcels
Yeah.
and then start cutting down
Yep.
shrubs.
Right.
Right.
Barb, you are correct. I think there was some discussion that there might be
Shrubs that you wanted
some-
to protect.
some shrubs or diminutive trees, I'll call them.
No, that was.
On certain
correct.
right-of-way strips. But I thought, at least in the Arboretum Committee discussions, there was a consensus that we weren't going to be able to wordsmith our way into protecting those, and it would just need to be tagging, use tagging for any special shrubs in right-of-way planting areas.
Yeah, I mean, I
Is
think, I think,
Yeah.
if-
To your memory?
And my proposed fix was to reference only shrubs planted by the town in any planting strip.
Which makes sense.
So, for example, at the grotto, that captures both the town parcel and the shrubs planted in the planting strip.
Ah, okay.
At the pool, it captures the shrubs planted in the planting strip along
Okay.
with the trees. But I
Um,
do think we have to drop rights of way from a definition of a town parcel. That would be overreach.
Right.
Where is planting strip defined? Is it in the overall code
it
or?
is.
Yeah, it's where one of these little ellipses is. It's either 715A. I think it's 715A. Is that right?
Look real quick.
Okay, I don't. have-
The text,
Right,
well, the text is in Barb's,
It's in the
Memo.
memo.
just
okay.
above the bold-faced revisions.
Yeah.
And to the best of my recollection, it's 715A. I'm sorry, 702.
It is actually in.
It would be
section-
702.
Yeah,
right?
702 definitions, which is what is in the memo. Planting strip is defined as areas showing those strips of land and town rights of way which are not paid for vehicular use and which lie between the paved portion of said streets and adjacent private property lines.
So essentially, the right-of-way, the planting strip is what we often
Consider the right of way.
talk about casually as the right-of-way.
Correct.
But this is being more specific that the planting strip is the unpaved right-of-way.
It would capture, for example, that strip on Claremont Place, where there is a right-of-way that was never paved, and there's now an access driveway on it, but there are town plantings in the portion of that right-of-way.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Geraldine's point is a valid one, which is we don't want to be responsible for pruning and trimming all of the shrubs and all the right of ways in the
Yeah.
entire town.
Right, just
So
on
we
the
don't want
town
people to be
parcels.
precluded from taking care of that job in their own property right of ways. That's the point.
Yeah, sounds like we have pretty good consensus about taking right-of-way out of the definition of town parcel,
Mhm.
right? And that should fix most of those issues. I'm comfortable with Chris's edit of those shrubs planted by the town in a planting strip, which will help to protect
Yeah.
special shrubs.
Right.
I think it will still be confusing for the homeowners, so some education here will be necessary. I did also have one other concern, though. When you look at the payment. So, I guess it's 716C,
Mhm.
2C. 716-2C, and I'm looking at the marked up version. It says if the application, which is an application to request either pruning or removal, is approved, the resident has to pay, whether it be pruning or removal. And I don't think we want to ask residents to pay for pruning of town trees.
I-
We don't do that now. This
No.
would be a new change, so I don't think that was the intent.
Yeah, I think the intent of this section, and I think some of this language has been around for a while too, but I understand the confusion is I'm doing a construction project at my home, and I want to be able to remove a town tree so that whatever it is I want to do. I would say more often than not, the person who's wanting to make the improvement to their home that is necessitating the removal of a town tree would be the one to pay for it because it's their private benefit project. The only time I can think of pruning, and it did happen fairly recently, we had a resident who had to remove a very large tree that was their own private tree. In order to be able to remove the tree, they needed to cut a branch from a town tree. And that permission was granted, conditioned upon their doing some balancing work because the removal of that limb was going to make the tree lopsided. When that work was completed, the private tree company that did work for the resident failed to do the balancing work. We then went back to them. At that point, they didn't want to deal with their tree company. I arranged for Empire to do it, but the resident had to basically pay us that amount in advance of the work being
Okay.
done. So that's the only time that's happened during my tenure, but there are those very rare instances where private work necessitates something being done to a town tree. And in that case, I think that is where the resident would likely need to pay for it, as they did in this instance. But you're correct, Jerry. More often than not, the pruning they're bringing a problem to our attention.
Right. I wonder if maybe we could amend it with something along the lines of non-routine pruning or something like that.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, actually.
Or requested.
Or, yeah, owner requested.
It's,
But we want residents to speak up and say, so that we can send the arborist to homes where some pruning is needed. Say a resident notices that their town tree is impeding power lines or something. We want those things to be reported. We don't want people to be afraid of that because they think we'll charge them.
yeah, we would need to work on this language, but I think it's any removal of a town tree or any pruning of a town tree is necessitated by work on private property. I mean, I think that's what we're really
Yeah,
getting at.
Fine.
I think I can kind of work with the town attorney and the mayor on some language, but I would not take this section out altogether because there are going to be those instances where.
Yeah, and I'm not
it comes into
suggesting that. I
play.
was just a little nervous about the pruning portion.
Yeah,
Where I think
it's-
it needs some editing to make it
Yeah,
more clear when it applies, the
Yeah.
payment for pruning.
we're probably talking about 1/10 of a
Okay.
percent of
There's
all
been-
cases.
there's
Yeah.
Been no motion. This is just discussion. Is it the sense of the council that we defer this for more work?
Yeah.
It's
I
kind
think
of.
it might be easier to defer it and
Okay.
see the changes before we
I-
vote on introducing
yeah.
it.
On a one-year anniversary.
I'm
Okay.
not gonna look-
No, no.
I mean, I'm sorry it's taking so
understand.
long, but I'd rather we get it right.
No, and I thank Mayor Keller for that because it's a lot easier not to wordsmith at a meeting sometimes. I think that just can become problematic. I think.
Yeah. I think people understand they can always call the town office with a request that their tree be pruned.
Yes, I'm
What
just
we're
worried
really
that by doing a new ordinance, you might scare them off of that.
Yeah, what we're really talking about is they ask that it be pruned and we get back to them and say, no, it just doesn't need it. And then they apply to bring it before the council. I need more room over my driveway or whatever.
Mhm.
But we can try to make that clearer.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so that's deferred. That brings.
I'll
us
just say
to-
thank you to Mayor Keller because I know he has put a lot of work into helping to
Oh,
make
no.
this language better
That
than it
doesn't,
was
that doesn't
originally.
mean doesn't need more work. Thank you, though. Fee and bond schedules. Barb, do you want to kick
Sure.
that off?
Back in June, the town council adopted ordinance number 2025-5, which modified chapter 4 of the town code. This is a section of the town code that is entitled Building, Housing, and Business Regulations. The overall goal of ordinance number 2025-5 was to add some contemporary provisions to the code and also address some identified procedural gaps. Section 401, subsection B, subsection 6 of the ordinance requires a permit application to be accompanied by a performance bond or other surety in an amount established by council resolution. The performance bond or surety is to ensure that the public right-of-way is restored to its pre-construction condition. As part of that process, we will obviously be, documenting photographically what the condition of the right-of-way is before work starts. Attached for your consideration is resolution number 2025-3, which would update the town's current fee schedule to establish the required performance bond or other surety for certain permit categories. So if you're looking at the resolution, there are two parts to it. One is shows the permit type, the associated application fee, and the required bond and surety. The amounts that are listed on that page are based on the Montgomery County Department of Permitting Services bond calculator. I had some discussions with Jason Azar, who most of you know is our civil engineer. His firm obviously works with the county DPS bond calculator fairly often. And so he was very helpful in kind of taking our existing permit categories and helping me figure out what that would mean in terms of the DPS bond calculator. I would note that the county's minimum bond for restoration of the right-of-way is $1,000. The county only requires a bond for projects of a certain type. So you will see on that first page a number of not applicables, which basically means that the county itself would not require someone to post a bond in those instances. You'll see a couple $1,000 entries. Those are the county minimum right-of-way restoration bond. So that's kind of the methodology for that page. You'll also note on that page that there are a number of categories that will reference an amount plus an applicable amount for town trees in the right-of-way. Mayor Keller and Phil Normandy, our consulting arborist, had a fairly extensive meeting recently to develop a proposed bond surety schedule pertaining to town trees that could be impacted by construction activity. That designated bond or surety amount would be in addition to the base bond surety amount predicated on the County Department of Permitting Services bond calculator. I'm going to probably defer to Mayor Keller because he certainly was instrumental in developing what's on the back page of this agenda item. But I would just note that the proposed amounts that Mayor Keller and Mr. Normandy developed basically varies on the size of the town tree and the project type, and that the listed amount on that back page of this background information for this agenda item would be applied on a per tree basis. Mayor Keller, would you like to, obviously you're very instrumental in terms of the development of this and what the thinking you and Mr. Normandy had. Is there anything you wanted to add? I've just tried to give a high level overview.
All right. Well, with respect to the resolution, it was adopted with reference to the schedule of fees. And I believe we need to add a further whereas. And I believe I circulated a last minute
You did.
email on this. I would propose that we add a whereas referencing bond amounts, specifically, let's say that the attached schedule of bond amounts, whether associated with permits or tree protection, is necessary to achieve policy goals related to compliance, deterrence, and recovery of the cost of restoration. Um, the reason we need that, and then under be it resolved, we would reference both the fee schedule and bond amount schedule. That although in a certain sense it makes sense to discuss these because they seem related, they have two very different bases and limitations. An application fee in general has to be keyed to the costs of the municipality to process, administer, and enforce. You cannot, for example, because we want to dissuade people from demolishing homes, we cannot make the fee for that $10,000 because that's far in excess of the amount of money it takes us to process it, administer it, have a hearing, and then oversee the actual event. Bonds, however, have a different role. They are meant to make the municipality whole in the event that there's a violation of the permit. So and in that, it also needs to be related to the nature of the work, but it can also incorporate certain policy aims such as deterring non-compliance. So, for example, in the column on the first page for the required bond or surety for relatively small projects that are unlikely to cause damage that would require remediation, the bond is only $1,000. But for a driveway, parking pad, or curb cut, and for new residents, it's considerably higher since the nature of that work is such that there might be more damage that requires a higher bond amount to be, for the town to be made whole.
This is a bond amount, not cash amount, right?
Well, it can be a cash bond or
Then it's
surety.
Least when the work is done.
Yes,
Yeah.
or it can be released if there's been no
If it's just
violation.
for-
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
As applied to trees, it's not as straightforward, but the theory is the same. So to restore a curb that is demolished by a contractor in the course of building a new home, you have a certain yardstick. It would cost so much per lineal foot. And then you add an administration cost on top of that. For trees, it's more difficult because there isn't an easy formula for replacement. Particularly, there is if the tree was just planted. You know that it costs $300 to acquire the tree and another 200 of staff time to plant it. For trees that have been in any length of time, it's more difficult. And for mature trees, because true replacement is impossible, the primary aim of a bond in that case is not to make the town whole in the event that the tree is destroyed, but rather to deter the destruction of the tree in the first place. You cannot just go out and buy a 40-year-old maple. It's impossible. Yeah.
Irreplaceable and priceless.
So those are in general the things that underlay our recommendations on trees and the distinction between fees and bonds. How do we want to handle this? Do we want to discuss it and see if we can get to a point where we introduce a motion. All right,
I'm just
I-
or
wondering
we
if
can-
it's- If there's a tree in the right of way that is big and we want to have it be preserved and they put up a bond to keep it,
well,
is that what happens?
the
with
way it'll be
$5,000?
structured, because there's a requirement for a tree protection plan.
Yeah. But what if
It
the
would-
tree dies anyways? I mean, that's the trouble that
Well,
I'm having with my big tree. in
There,
my
there are a
house.
lot of problems, but the way it would be formulated is if the tree protection plan is violated. So if there's a clear, if they run over the fence,
Right, but if the tree protection plan is not violated, but the tree still dies, because when you do a lot of construction around these old trees, they die anyway, is what I've been
Uh,
told.
I think
Then whose job is it to pay for that tree to take it down? Is that the owner if it's in the right of way, or the town?
it's an impossible proposition to prove.
Okay,
What the town undertakes is to require a tree protection plan that in our judgment obviates that possibility.
okay,
If it happens anyway, if they adhere to the tree protection plan, they don't store 4 tons of cinder block against the trunk. They don't run down the fence.
right.
They don't forfeit the bond. If 3 years later, the tree turns up its toes and dies, it's something that by prescribing the tree protection plan we were implicitly saying we are doing our best to reduce that possibility,
Okay,
and we won't hold the homeowner or the contractor responsible.
then the town pays for taking. down the
Yes.
tree. Okay, I just wanted to understand.
Yep.
Could I just ask in practical terms for a situation where it is the homeowner who's renovating their driveway and home or driveway or home, and it's not a developer who's flipping the house or whatever. How does that work to post a bond? Does that mean that they give a check for $10,000 to the town? I mean, how does that actually work in practical terms for a regular resident?
In practical terms, we do allow something beyond a cash bond. I will say that that's usually what you want, because if someone is using a bonding company, then you get into an argument about whether there's actually been a default of that. That's not an easy process, or can be challenging. So the way that the code is written, it would be really up to the person. If I would say for small dollar amounts in talking to, I'm not suggesting 10,000 is a small dollar amount, but for $1,000 or, something where it's just sort of the base part of it, and there's no town tree involvement, someone would probably write a check. I'm not even sure they would go through the hassle, and it's a question mark in Jason Azar's mind, whether you'll find a bank interested in doing a letter of credit if the amount is fairly de minimis. If you're talking about a new home construction and a couple town trees, construction companies typically are used to getting letters of credit and things like that. So they have the option generally of how they handle it. But the onus is going to be on the resident to sort of talk to a bank if they want to go the letter of credit route.
Or cash.
Or cash,
Right.
yeah. I mean, cash is certainly something everyone's familiar with, but so they have that option underneath the code of how they would choose to do it.
So in terms of implications for residents, it could happen fairly often that they would have 2 town trees that are over 6 inches in caliper. So they might have to post a $20,000 bond.
If they were, I think your example was a driveway. If it was a driveway, then it'd be, actually be $23,300 under your example, because there would be the base bond, basically,
Oh,
which is
the
just
base bond
covering, right.
first. Okay.
How is it determined which trees could be impacted by this construction activity? Is that?
That is done in consultation with the town arborist. So typically when we receive an application, actually it's not, we always do, we will route the application to Mr. Normandy. He will basically identify, which town trees could be impacted and kind of the measures that the applicant, because we're considering a permit, have to go through. So that's done in consultation with him. So it does depend on the nature of the project. But he will look at that. I mean, I think the one thing he and I were talking about the other day, because we had our fairly new resident who unfortunately discovered some structural issues with their new home, which is obviously upsetting. And we were having some discussion, I was having some discussion with the resident about the town tree that Mr. Normandy and I had identified as potentially at risk. It was difficult to kind of explain to the resident because most of the construction was happening on the other side of their driveway. But the reality is, what I think we've learned is when you have construction going on, where crews on the ground actually walk, where they tend to dump materials is not defined to a certain area. They will look for any available space to do that. But that's how it works out. We just look at the map and what the type of activity, and generally any town tree and right of way is potentially at risk when there's construction.
Are we ready to consider this as a motion? All right, I will entertain a motion to adopt the fee and bond schedule as circulated, including the resolution with the additions that I circulated earlier, which is an additional whereas addressing bonds and the addition to the resolution that references the attached fee and bond amount schedule. Is that reasonably clear? Yeah.
Change the first one, but adopt the second one. Is that right? We're gonna change the language on.
The proposal is to
No,
introduce it.
it's as circulated with Barbara's August 11 memo, but the resolution itself would reference bonds as well as fees by adding a whereas.
Okay.
And under the numbered resolution 1, it would reference the attached fee and bond amount schedule.
I just want to get a clarification. Could you remind me of the history as to why this is an adoption and not an introduction?
Because resolutions only have one reading.
Okay. I'd be more comfortable if we waited to consider this after the Arboretum Committee has an opportunity to review the bond amounts because of their summer hiatus, they did not have that
I'm sorry.
opportunity. The Arboretum Committee,
Oh,
because
yes.
of their own summer hiatus, did not have an opportunity to review the bonds. So I'm a little uncomfortable recommending this for adoption without
Okay.
having the committee having an opportunity to comment on the amounts of the bonds. I know they are in favor, the committee as a whole, of the bond concept, but they did not have an opportunity yet. And I apologize, I just now
No.
realized that we were doing adoption and introduction. I should have noticed that earlier. I apologize.
So you want this, could you go?
I'd like to recommend that we table this and give the Arboretum Committee an opportunity to
Weigh in.
review it before the September meeting.
I would like to see a
Well-
clean copy of it too,
Okay,
because we're
Certainly.
missing some whereas,
right.
some other language in there.
Yeah, that would give us the opportunity to get a clean copy before adoption.
Exactly.
Chair Lee, is the Arboretum Committee meeting, it's going to be after the
Well, I
council
will
meeting.
recommend that they consider
Okay.
selecting a date to meet before the council meeting
Okay.
so that
Um,
that'd be great.
there would be a compromise, which is to adopt it as circulated, with the exception of the last page.
Well,
That gets the fee amounts and the required bonds without specific amounts for trees.
Why don't we just do the whole thing when it's complete after they've, Arboretum committees looked at it?
All right,
That's what I'd like. to do.
that means we don't look at it again till October. They aren't meeting this month.
They don't currently have a scheduled meeting, but that doesn't mean that they couldn't change their schedule. It's possible.
Okay.
They could. We can check in with them. So, but these, is there any other, are there reasons for current town business to expedite this?
The only thing I would say is applications are, permit applications are continuing to come in as things stand today. You've got a provision in Chapter 4 that allows you to assess a right-of-way restoration bond, but in the absence of a resolution, there's nothing we can charge anybody. So that's the only downside, I would say, is that, like, we have a new home construction application, and there'll be a demolition on your September meeting agenda. So there's only so long we can hold applications, so it just means that those applications would go through without any type of required surety.
How many applications are there, would you say? Is it-
The only one that I think that is still, I think we're caught up as far as I remember, except so we have someone who has filed for a house demolition that obviously requires a hearing before you, and that will be on your September agenda. They have submitted all the required documents and it's been reviewed for their new home construction. I'm just holding it simply because until they have permission to demolish the house, it's kind of irrelevant. I notified you all that the house that was slated for demolition on Claremont, they're no longer going to demolish it. They are actively working on their building addition plans. I don't know when they'll be in. That will just be processed administratively because there's no demolition or anything.
Are there
Uh,
any big right-of-way trees that we have to worry about in either of those properties?
Yes.
Yes, yes, on both.
Okay. Now, that's not to say, I mean, that there wouldn't still be an effort to protect those.
No, there will be a tree
arborists
protection
would
plan,
still- yeah,
yes.
There would still be a
There-
tree protection plan.
There's a
would
tree
still be-
protection plan that has been written in contemplation of the demolition at 10915 Claremont that we will simply convert into one in association with their building permit.
I guess I just feel like, these are pretty big numbers and, they shock me a little bit and I've been following this conversation all along. I think for a lot of residents and even maybe for the Arboretum Committee, it will take a little bit of discussion to make sure people understand why we would, ask for such large dollar amounts for the bonds. And given some of the criticism the council has had in the past of kind of suddenly introducing rather momentous changes without a lot of public conversation, I think there's really not, it's the risk of upsetting neighbors over this is
No, I think-
higher than, taking another month or two to consider it.
That's a valid observation. So we'll just table this in the hopes that the Arboretum Committee can meet in the next 3
I'll
weeks.
reach out
I was
tonight.
hoping.
Language.
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
clean up the language, update
Right.
the language,
Right.
give the Arboretum Committee, and now that this has been put out on the listserv, we could even do a little bit more listserv communication to make sure the residents are aware we're proposing this big change.
Yeah, so I'll update based on your discussion tonight and just route that to all of you, hopefully later this week. That way, Jerry, if you're able to see if they can get pulled together, at least.
To it, but
I know, I'm not holding you, but at least they'd have a clean copy of what you all have talked about.
Thank you. I appreciate your patience.
Bruce, can I just ask a question for my own edification? The amounts of the bonds, did we arrive at that I think you mentioned this, so my apologies. Did we arrive at that in consultation with Phil?
Very much so.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the committee didn't have a chance to review it, is my
Yeah.
concern.
I understood completely. I wanted to make sure that.
No, that-
Phil
that-
was consulted.
Involved. Mhm.
Yeah, perfect.
Makes perfect sense. Okay. The town manager's report.
I will try to keep this brief, given the lateness of the hour. So included in your agenda packet is the unaudited preliminary financial report for the month of June, which obviously marked the end of FY 2025. Just a couple highlights. In terms of revenues, they exceeded the budgeted amount by $79,366. The largest contributing factor to that variance was income tax receipts, which exceeded the budgeted amount by $51,135. Some of that increase was anticipated in the calculation of the carryover amount into FY 2026. Other accounts where that came in higher than budgeted include real property taxes. To some degree, that was also factored into the carryover amount calculation. And investment earnings, interest rates remain high. And you may recall that we adjusted the amount of anticipated investment earnings as part of budget amendment 1 in FY 2025, and it still came in high. So it's kind of a good news thing. On the operating expense side, operating expenses came in approximately $89,000 less than the budgeted amount. The largest driving factors were the unexpended balance of the contingency account, which is account 17.0. That accounted for about 34% of the variance. The other kind of rolled up budget category that also came in under budget by a significant amount was infrastructure and equipment expenses, which is account 13.0, and there's obviously sub-accounts in all of these. But overall, account 13.0, infrastructure and equipment expenses came in under budget by just a little over 32,000. That accounted for about 36% of the variance between budgeted operating expenses and where we believe we're ending up. So all told, that's about 70% of the difference right there between those two accounts. There were also several other expense categories that came in to a lesser degree under budget. One was overall personnel cost. As you likely recall, we did have some turnover in the second half of the fiscal year on our maintenance team. So there was a couple months where our budgeted 3 staffing was only at the 2 level. And then our town committee costs came in less than anticipated by roughly $10,000. And we also had some savings in account 14.0, which is town services. As you may recall, we budget $15,000 for the compost crew subsidy, but we only expended $10,277. On the capital budget side, I just wanted to note that at year end, the unexpended balance of funds under the American Rescue Plan Act was $43,286. This funding is earmarked for the installation of decorative lighting on Waverly Avenue between the Penn Place building and Montrose. I had previously reported to you that the shipment date for the light poles and the luminaires was the middle of August. That has now slid to August 29th. Yeah, this is both the lamp post and the,
What? Say that one more time.
well, the date has shifted basically. It's currently August 29th. So
The ship date?
the ship date, not the installation date. So once the materials actually arrive, Traffic Systems, which is our vendor, basically said that they should be able to do the install within 2 to 3 weeks, depending on where their crews are already assigned. Not sure what's going on. Traffic Systems also reported that they work with a lot of lighting manufacturers. This is Spring City, but they said they're noticing these kind of delays across jobs that they have, regardless of who the manufacturer is. So my plan is to check in again with them in a couple weeks, just kind of see if that date is holding.
What about the additional trees on Waverly?
Well, one is kind of tied to the other. So I had some email exchanges with Phil Normandy over the weekend. He's obviously trying to put together his fall planting list and, wanting to know kind of how this is looking. As I said to him, and I would say to you, I would not put the trees in if these things are not installed. Obviously, putting newly planted trees and then having a bunch of people stepping all over their all around it doesn't seem like that would be a good thing to do. Yeah, I mean, he's waiting for a concrete date of when the stuff is going to be on site. And right now, I don't know. I mean, I have a date, but that date also shifted by a couple of weeks between your June meeting and now.
Are these seasonal lights or permanent display?
They're permanent.
These are light poles.
Oh, the poles.
Yeah, it'll look a little bit like what's on Strathmore, not
Yeah.
exactly, but close to it. And then the only last thing I wanted to comment about the, kind of unaudited report for FY 2025 is on the reserve fund summary. So what we do every year as part of preparing the budget is I get an estimate from Montgomery Municipal Cable of what they think will come in with the Verizon Capital PEG funds. And the state provides estimates for highway user funds. Both of these sources of funding are restricted. So when the council adopts the budget, those estimates are used to basically sweep those funds to the restricted funds. Montgomery Municipal Cable surprisingly came in a little bit higher, which given people moving to streaming is a little bit of surprise. And the state always seems to estimate that we're going to get a lot more money than we did. So the reserve fund summary that's in the June report basically reflects the actual amounts that we received from those two revenue sources during FY 2025. So basically Montgomery Municipal Cable, that went up a little bit than what you would have seen in your last report, and the highway user revenue funds were less than what you would have seen, for example, in your May report at your June meeting. There was a net difference between those two of $2,880. And you'll see, if you look at the reserve summary for June, it's just booked to an account called additional allocation because the funds have already been restricted and you actually have to go through a much more involved process to unrestrict funds. Highway user revenues, there is an annual report that I need to fill out showing if we have not, either we've spent it on an eligible project or that we've reserved it and what amount has been reserved. So as of June 30th, our reserved HUR funds totaled $164,992. That's what will be reported. I believe it's in January that I have to file the report. And right now we are not planning to do any eligible projects in FY 2026. So that funding will stay in reserved. The Verizon Capital PEG funds also have restricted use as of June 30th. The total was $24,437. That can be used to purchase new equipment for this space. It has to meet sort of the public educational government definition in the Verizon franchise agreement. But the thought is some of those funds could be applied to the audiovisual equipment that you've been talking about relative to town hall. In terms of the July report, obviously 1 month into the fiscal year, there's just not a lot to write home about. The only thing I would note is that the FY 2026 budget assumed a prior year carryover amount from FY 2025 of $133,500. The actual carryover amount will be $159,697, barring any changes that are identified in the audit. Are there any questions about the financial reports before I move on? Okay. I would just note that last week we did complete the transition to constant contact for all official town government communications. As of August 6th, which was the date I was typing this report, we had 296 signups for constant contact.
Is that signups in addition to, is that the total list?
That's the total list.
So that's the total list of existing users we were able to verify, transition over. We did have a couple of folks who, upon realizing we had an old email or a bad email for them, said, actually, I do still want to be kept in the loop. We did, unfortunately, despite our efforts, have a handful of bad emails. So the number has fluctuated. We're currently at 293 at last count. That's the number of individual email addresses that got the notification of tonight's meeting with the agenda and everything. I do want to take a moment to remind all of the elected officials, we have established accounts for all of you. In order to get into those accounts, we do need to coordinate the timing of the verification emails. I can't, send it to you at noon and you guys get to it at 7. It does expire quickly. We have unfortunately had some issues getting folks into the account, as Mayor Keller can attest. But this is a great communication tool for you, particularly as you continue to be liaisons with various committees, perhaps want to send out messaging on your own. So please find some time to connect with me so we can get you set up in these accounts and make sure you have what you need to be an effective council member.
I'm just curious what was the attrition? What was the list of Google listserv prior to the transition?
So of the two Google groups that existed, GPML and the GP Town Forum, before we handed that over to the CA, I want to say GPML was our smaller list. I would estimate it coming in at 425 or so.
Okay.
The forum, I want to say, was closer to 450. We noticed, and part of the reason it took so long to get us transitioned into constant contact was because of the amount of email addresses that had to be verified. Sometimes it was simple of a town resident who maybe used their first name, last name, and an at AOL has now moved to Gmail, just confirming with them which one to use. Some of them, we did have residents who we know passed recently, had to be removed. Others, we could not, based on the email address, identify who they belong to. And so they got the direct contact from me saying, you're currently on this list. Here's our plan to transition. If you want to be moved over, we do need you to proactively verify you want to be on here and what email address I should be adding in.
We may want to work with the Citizens Association to have an email go out via the forum,
Mhm.
encouraging people who aren't getting the official town emails to sign up, but we can. chat
Yes.
about that.
Jeanette did some great work working with our website provider to get the constant contact sign up form embedded and on
Yeah.
our communications page.
Yeah.
We do still have our messaging up on the website, so we can obviously reach out on the forum. They have had some later contacts, and I'd say 2 weeks ago, there was some forum conversation
Yeah.
about kind of what to do. So far, I haven't had anyone say, where's the agenda? What's going on?
Yeah.
So I suspect that there's a bit of self-selection of if people want it,
Sure.
they have reached out to make sure they get it.
So I did want to take this opportunity just to thank Councilmember Deutsch, who was very, very helpful to staff in terms of just crafting the messaging that went out to the community about the transition. So thank you, Chris. I did sit down, I've had some back and forth with Betty Fout. We met last Thursday morning. We had already gone through over email, just changing some of the settings for the town forum group to remove any reference to the town office and to switch that over. If any of you have worked in Google Groups, it's actually fairly easy when it's actually working and not banning people, such as myself. But she and I sat down and basically so she could see how to add somebody, change the membership status, which she did for those of us who had town government accounts were changed from owners to members, and how to add the CA as an owner. We had one sort of weird blip, I think, was it this last week, I guess, where somebody tried to post to the town forum, had a Gmail address, and for whatever reason, their message bounced back. They were unable to post. We're not quite sure why that is. So hopefully that won't continue to be a problem.
So does that mean that the town forum will stay as a Google group? Well, it will not be a constant contact.
That is correct. It is simply a community-driven forum that is, I think they say lightly moderated and managed by the Citizens Association.
Can we get into the constant contacts
I-
and see
I
who's
think you
there?
can as soon as you talk to Kayla.
Or send Kayla an email? Okay,
Yeah, and just set
At
up
a
a
time when
time.
you're ready to
Right.
reply to the
right,
auto-generated, yeah.
okay, good.
So on the town hall funding update, so on July 24th, I did receive a notification from the offices of Senator Alsobrook and Senator Van Hollen, notifying me that the Senate Appropriations Committee had recommended approval of our congressionally directed spending earmark request. This may sound familiar to the more tenured members because this is exactly where we were about this time last year. And they did open up their portal again. So as a reminder, what happened a year ago is the Senate Appropriations Committee recommended approval of our earmark request for the town hall project.
It's
Um,
$500,000.
$500,000, which is the maximum that is allowed under the particular funding authorization, which was the only one we qualified for, which is the National Park Service Save America's Treasures authorization. Last year, what happened is the House basically eliminated all earmarks as they were working on the federal budget. There hasn't really been, there's lots of other issues going on at the federal government. So we'll have to see what happens with the earmarks,
We
for the,
don't know if that is-
it will,
Okay.
it basically is, I mean, certainly getting to this stage is helpful, but essentially Congress needs to agree on and pass a final appropriations bill, and that needs to be signed into law by the president for federal fiscal year
So
2026.
that's not part of this big, better bill they just passed. This is something different.
This will be something different.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we don't know if that's gonna happen or.
They need to start working on,
Right.
the federal budget. As Jerry knows, as a federal employee, the guidance that Senator Alsobrooks and Senator Van Hollen, I think this is a quote from the email notification, was that typically appropriation bills are passed by both chambers of Congress in late December, but this timing can vary.
Right.
So we'll just have to wait and see, but
don't
we
know.
won't know anything for probably another 6 months. I would say if you all have the opportunity to just send a quick email to the office of Senator Alsobrooks and Senator Van Hollen, I would encourage you to do so. We've obviously entered the federal funding process last year. And at that time, Senator Cardin was Senator Van Hollen's partner. But Senator Van Hollen, and his staff, I've been working with them probably now for close to 2 years in terms of just gearing up and doing these applications. His staff has been incredibly helpful in helping us navigate the process. I would say the same thing for Senator Cardin's office, except they're no longer on the Hill. I will send, yes, I'll get something to all of you, but I just think anytime somebody champions one of our projects, it's helpful to thank them, because you never know.
Email to all of us.
I will.
who We should contact. And what
I will do
basic
that.
We should say and do it.
Sure, be happy to do that. I meant to do it for tonight, but I will also do the same thing. We also owe a belated thank you for the $500,000 that came through the state. So I will draft something for that too. That would be, and certainly I think the mayor could do it on behalf of everybody.
And is that $500,000
That-
done?
Yeah, so the $500,000 that we
Okay.
got through the state process, the two parties who should be thanked is obviously, the state senator who kind of took up that cause for us, but also County Councilmember Kate Stewart. Kind of the way that transpired is when I was given the opportunity to reapply through the federal process, Senator Van Hollen, staff member, had said, look, I'll give you a pass on getting updated, letters of support. I had reached out to County Council President Kate Stewart. It wasn't that hard. All they had to do was change the dates in the letter. That's when she became aware of kind of what had happened to us through the federal earmark process. And basically she championed our request to get it in at the last minute through the state budget. So
So is that done now?
yeah, it was part of that $500,000 was included in the state's general bonding part of the budget process. Our project is clearly there. I have not been notified by DGS and Department of General Services in terms of the capital awards package. That's on my to-do list for this week, but our project is definitely in the bill. That's correct. Yeah.
Barb, that's 500, not 800? I don't know why I had.
It's, no, it's a 300 and a 500,000
Yeah.
from the state. So a total of
Okay.
800. Yeah. Last but not least, just to give a shout out to our maintenance team that always does a wonderful job. This is an incredibly busy time of year for them with mowing and weeding and doing other tasks as they have time, including invasive tree and brush removal. As we were wrapping up the town office renovation project at the end of the last fiscal year, all the items that we were waiting to come in did come in, such as area rugs and wall art. And thank George and his team for getting all that done. It was a great project to be able to do when the heat indices were about 110, was to have some indoor work. The team was also very helpful. We started realizing that we were having problems with our wireless access points in Penn Place. We did order new devices and the maintenance team installed those so that we have more consistent coverage. So that concludes my report unless there's any questions.
One question,
Glass door and entrance of
It's been ordered. We ordered that through Danny Lope's company, Turnkey Properties. It's been ordered. I don't know what the date is, but as soon as that comes in, he'll be installing that.
oh, that's great. Will that be accompanied with some sort of, is it just meant to be knocked on, or will there be like a doorbell or something?
It'll probably still be the doorbell, I think. But yeah, we can move that. And that's what we can all hear no matter where we are. If someone's by themselves and they're in the kitchenette, it's loud. We'll hear it. Doors, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
New business. I fully expected a hall full of people on this issue. And so I'm really tempted to ask whether we want to even deal with it, but it's the Montgomery County noise law, including ban on gas-powered leaf blowers. Barb?
Yep, I'll try to give you the
is this-
brief version because I think everyone has some familiarity with this. So in September of 2023, the County Council passed Bill 18-22 entitled Noise Control Leaf Removal Equipment and Amendments. That was signed into law on October 9th of 2023. Among other things, it prohibited the sale of handheld backpack and walk behind gas-powered leaf blowers and vacuums starting July 1st of 2024. So that's been in effect for a little over a year. What just went into effect July 1st of this year was prohibiting the use of those same gas-powered leaf blowers and leaf vacuums. It also authorized a rebate program that I believe Mayor Keller has shared with residents in the past on the town forum. That rebate program will run through December of 2026, and it's designed to partially offset the cost of replacing gas-powered leaf blowers and leaf vacuums. It exempted the use of gas leaf blower equipment for agricultural producers. And one of the things I was not aware of until digging into this a little bit more is it did maintain noise ordinance limits for leaf blowers and leaf vacuums not to exceed 70 decibels at 50 feet, which is the county standard for noise control. So while there's an outright ban on gas-powered equipment, that provision could also affect some electric-powered equipment. So as we've talked about, I think just notification over email is the county ban on gas-powered leaf blowers and leaf vacuums is codified as part of County Code Chapter 31B, which is the noise control section of the county code. We have not adopted that chapter as part of Section 109 of our code. And Section 109 in our own code lists the county laws that the town has opted into. So therefore, the county's ban on the use of gas-powered leaf blowers and leaf vacuum is not applicable within the corporate boundaries of Garrett Park. You all had some of you had a brief discussion about this matter back in March, whether to opt into Chapter 31B. At that time, following some discussion, you agreed not to opt into. Obviously, there's been some listserv traffic fairly recently, leading to this item being on your agenda tonight. Just wanted to note that County Code Chapter 31B is broader than just the gas-powered leaf equipment. It does address the regulation of a variety of noise-related matters, and some of those matters include standards for construction activity. As a general principle, Chapter 31B regulates noise-related activity based on decibel levels, and so those are measured through purchase of a decibel meter. And typically you'll have police departments who own decibel meters as part of what they do. There was some questioning back in March in terms of why did we not opt into County Code Chapter 31B. So back in 2023, then Mayor Joanna Welch did ask Claire McDonald to research this issue. Claire was able to identify several references just to the town opting out of the county's noise ordinance, but she was unable to find anything that specifically explained the reasoning for not opting in. So unfortunately, I don't have any legislative context to share with you. Just briefly about the county enforcement, the fine that they've established is $500 per violation. County law does require photographic evidence of a gas-powered leaf blower or leaf vacuum in use to initiate an enforcement action. Included in your agenda packet as attachment 2 is the form that county residents can use to file an online complaint with the Montgomery County Department of Environmental Protection. Anyone who is filing a complaint has to upload at least one photo showing the gas-powered equipment in use. They have the option of also uploading additional photos or a video not to exceed, I believe it's 10 seconds. There is a separate process by which county residents can file a noise complaint for battery and electric leaf blowers that they believe are exceeding the 70 decibel limit at 50 feet. That copy of that form is also included in your agenda packet as attachment 3. It is a two-party noise disturbance complaint, which is sort of the county's general noise complaint process. Anyone who is filing a complaint as a county resident or anyone else who is an interested party signs an affidavit as part of that complaint saying that they're willing to state in a court of law that the information that they've provided is accurate. And they also have to agree to testify as to what they observed and the authenticity of the photograph. So at this juncture, you guys have several courses of action you can do. You can obviously maintain the status quo and remain opted out of Chapter 31B. You could choose to, through legislation, opt into County Code Chapter 31B, noise control in its entirety. I would note that the county's allowable construction hours are different than ours. So if you did opt into the county code in its entirety, we would need to amend our code to make the construction hours. I would say they're much more expansive than ours, and I don't think that's probably something that you want to do. They will allow work on holidays. They will allow work on Sundays. Everything is sort of tied to noise levels. But I think that would represent a pretty big change for our residents to have construction activity occurring on Sundays, for example. The other option you have, and we have done this in several areas of the county code, is you can choose to only opt into the portion of the county code chapter that bans gas-powered leaf blowers and vacuums. And then the last option that I could come up with is you could adopt a local ordinance tailored to Garrett Park. I was talking to Kate Stewart's chief of staff, trying to figure out what happened. So there was a committee discussion.
Chief of staff for the county?
Kate Stewart's chief of staff.
For-
So recently there was a move, one of the county council members asked for a seasonal exemption for a period of time for commercial landscapers. That was considered by a county council committee within the last couple weeks. It failed on a vote of 1 to 2. I have to admit, I've worked in the county for a long time and I don't remember very many committee votes failing. So I was talking to County President Kate Stewart's chief of staff to find out what happened, given that that failed. She was explaining the process. Essentially, 6 members of the county council would have to agree to want this issue to be moved forward to the full county council. And at least I've been advised that those 6 votes are not there. So that's effectively dead at the county level. But in talking to Ms. Thorne, she basically said that if she were in our shoes, she would probably, and we wanted to do something, she would probably give some consideration to just developing our own local ordinance so that you could make it whatever you wanted it to be. So those were just her thoughts on it. If there was a local ordinance, you could obviously, provide for an outright ban like Montgomery County. You could, which some of the municipalities had in place predating the county ban. There were 2 of our neighboring communities who had bans going back several years, but they only imposed them. There was an exemption during the fall months, for example. So I think you have a lot of options if you want to do a local ordinance. That ordinance at a minimum would declare a violation to be a municipal infraction. subject to whatever fine amount you all wish to prescribe. Because there's not staff here, 7 days a week. And talking to the town attorney, we would envision something similar to the county enforcement process where a resident would have the opportunity to file an online complaint. But similar to the county, whoever actually witnessed the alleged violation would have to be prepared to testify in court. So it mirrored that. So obviously, any of the options other than maintaining the status quo would require you all to adopt an ordinance. Practically speaking, that ordinance couldn't be introduced probably till September, adopted in October. And so if you stayed on your normal meeting schedule, the earliest any ordinance could take effect would be November 3rd of 2025. Obviously, we didn't contemplate any transition in the FY 2026 budget, so there would need to be some funding allocated for our own maintenance team. Included in your memo, are some,
Team for what?
well, they use gas powered blowers.
Don't have to get new one.
Yeah, so I talked with George Miller, our maintenance supervisor, and I had a discussion. He shared that we have 3 new gas powered leaf blowers that probably have 3 to 5 years of useful life left on them. He estimates kind of the value of those as approximately combined $1,800. Obviously, in this area, there's probably not going to be much of a resale market for gas-powered blowers. I had George give me what he would envision would be the startup cost for transitioning to a year-round use of only electric equipment. That's about $9,000. That would cover purchasing, backpack blowers, some chargers, and then the batteries wear down fairly quickly. So a lot of this would be to have batteries. He advised that each backpack unit requires 2 batteries to operate. We did have one of our contractors who does a lot of work in Garrett Park let the guys use one of his battery pack equipment just to kind of road test it. And at least that unit provided only about 45 minutes of full blowing power, which is sort of when you have a heavy group of, bunch of leaves. That's probably what they would need. In terms of replacement cost for electric equipment versus gas powered, they all have a replacement cycle of about 3 to 5 years. So nothing really different there. Obviously, if we adopted our own law and we were prosecuting those things ourselves, there could be some legal cost if we ended up taking someone to court. The other thing Mr. Miller asked me to just share with you all is that because of just the batteries wearing down, is that they would require more time in the field to perform the same task. He's not opposed to making the switch, but I think there are some operational consequences that he wanted to make sure you all were aware of. And he estimates that additional time to be at least 20%, particularly during the height of leaf season. One of the other things that George has shared with me on several occasions as we've talked about this issue is that, the technology for commercial applications of battery operated equipment, is advancing. I mean, it's been
Right.
around for decades for, residential use. I had one myself decades ago. He just wondered whether or not there was any merit to at least deferring the implementation just to see kind of how the technology develops. But ultimately, that's your decision. And obviously, the maintenance team will do whatever you want them to do. I would suggest that whether you opt into Chapter 31B or we craft our own ordinance, that some consideration be given to not having an effective date any earlier than August 1st of 2026. When you all had your discussion back in March, we did make a point of reaching out to contractors who, there's a handful of them that do a lot of work in Garrett Park, and let them know that you all had decided at that point in time not to opt in to the county. So we would obviously need an opportunity to sort of reverse that communication a little bit. And also it would give you the chance to just budget for any startup costs through the regular budget process instead of going through the amendment. But once again, that's your decision. George's final comment to me was that perhaps you all might wish to consider kind of a phased implementation. And he was aware of, I think it was Chevy Chase Village in the town of Chevy Chase. They had things on the books that predated the county ban by a number of years. What they did as an initial startup was to phase it in over 3 years, but basically require electric or battery operated equipment to be used, except for the 3 heavy months of leaves, which would be October, November, and December. And then at the end of that 3-year period, what those municipalities do, as I understand, was they had that 3-month carve out, and at the end of 3 years, everything had to go to battery or electric. So I think you have a wide variety of options here. I think
Right.
it all just depends what you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, I hate the noise myself. I feel like every minute they're out there, I'm sitting on my front porch and they're always blowing and chopping and. So, I would love to get rid of the noise, but I do also appreciate that the technology is changing. And if you give these guys a job and then the thing runs out of batteries in 45 minutes, it seems like a little counterintuitive. So it might not be the best time to try to implement this because we might be a little ahead of the technology. So that, I would love to get rid of the noise, but they are also tremendously polluting. I do know
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I stand.
Well, the battery ones aren't silent either. So
Right.
you're talking about
Correct.
less noise, but for longer jobs.
Well, it'll take longer to
To
do it.
do,
Yeah.
right.
It feels like you're running all the time around here.
Yeah, I was not, as I was, thank you for that, but that's hugely informative. I was not aware that municipalities such as Garrett Park had the option of simply not. Like, my thinking is that we could, if we wanted to, adopt something more stringent, and my interpretation of 31B1, the declaration of policy, was that you could adopt something different, but must adopt a standard or regulation that is less stringent. I didn't realize that, the county passed a law and municipalities had the option of not following that law.
That was most of
That was
what,
news to me.
yeah, that was most of what Claire found. So there was it's referred to as the Tilly case, which goes back, I believe, to the 80s. Chris, does that sound right? But essentially what came down, it was a court decision in Maryland that basically said, except for certain, health officers and things like that, where the county has, an overarching interest, that municipalities basically had to proactively choose to opt into most county laws or had the latitude to do so. And so that's kind of what Claire found when she was looking with references to that particular court case.
But does that mean that in the absence of any noise ordinance, we're exempted at the moment we start, the moment we adopt a noise ordinance, it needs to be more stringent, equal to or more stringent
I think
than the
it can
county?
be whatever we want it to be.
I think you have some latitude, is my understanding. Certainly with building regulations, you can't make them any more lax than the county, but I'm not sure this falls into the same legal category as I understand it in talking to the town attorney. So hopefully, whether it's tonight or at a future date, if you all have a consensus about where you think you'd like to go with this, then I will have some further discussions with Ron Bolt.
I'd be interested in giving more opportunity for public input on this because I
Mhm.
don't have a sense of whether the community
Mhm.
is in favor of this or not. In terms of my own thoughts, I think when we talked about it in March, I don't think I was aware that there was the possibility of adopting a portion of the county regulation, and I could see the benefits of that
Mhm.
because I do want to keep our own construction time periods, but there are a lot of benefits if we adopt something like this to opting into county enforcement and
Mhm.
regulation. It's just simpler for residents. It's
Yeah.
also simpler for us at the
Yeah.
town from an administrative standpoint. I have no problem with phasing it in, particularly if we align that with the timing of the purchasing incentives that are available.
Yeah.
And also companies that are doing work in other places other than
Right.
Garrett Park. So they probably are already gonna have to buy the equipment to use it in other places.
Yeah, candidly, when I mentioned that I was talking to Beth Key about a different matter, I was trying to figure out where they are in this because they are a Montgomery County based business. And I wanted to make sure their equipment was compliant and,
Right.
and they basically said, yes, they had already invested in it.
Right.
And, candidly, I think they would have had the right if they so chose to come back and say the ground rules under which they based their pricing had changed, but they did not do that.
So the electric leaf blowers that are available work as well as the gas powered ones, they just don't last as long, is that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
my understanding, and I'm, the only leaf blower I had was an electric one that I plugged into outlets that were all around my house. So I haven't used a battery operated one. My understanding in talking to George is that I think as the charge is starting to wane, then the volume, if you will, of
Right.
blowing
Right.
is diminished.
Right.
I think it's a good opportunity for, we had one resident that kind of emailed and said, well, not being aware
Yeah.
that, he read something saying the county had passed this ordinance and assumed that we were in Montgomery County.
Yeah.
And so therefore, he made, I think he made a buying decision based on that. But I think the timing of constant contact now is that much more important to be
Mhm.
able to proactively get in front of that. And Kayla, I know you're all over this, so. But no, I think being able to communicate that, I will say that, one of the many things that I love about Garrett Park is this idea that we are kind of leaders when it comes to certain, whether it's environmental or other thoughts. And to me, again, not having been privy to some of the discussions, I certainly would be open to considering the environmental aspects of the, gas versus electric. And I think that, we talk about the battery. I think that technology actually is improving at such a rate that it may not really be distinguishable. But I think, just from Garrett Park's standpoint, if we were looking to at least have the discussion around, should we adopt something in line with the county? I think, maintaining the construction schedule that's most advantageous for us makes a lot of sense, but I'd certainly be open to having a discussion around adopting the electric leaf blowers from the environmental standpoint. Certainly the noise benefit is also good as well. But I think, from the pollution emitting aspect.
It's interesting to me, though, that they're banning leaf blowers, but not gas mowers, because they make a lot of noise and pollute a lot as well.
Yeah.
So, and this doesn't address that at all. So you
Mm-mm.
can still have gas powered equipment out there. You just can't have a leaf.
One step at
blower.
a time.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Yeah,
Well,
I'd
I
be in
think it's a
favor.
practical point of view, because the thing is, the batteries required to provide a large 48-inch mower, it would be huge and extremely expensive.
Yeah.
So I think that the technology is not caught up with mowers ride on or walk behind.
Yeah, I hate those guys.
Oh, I love those things, man.
Yeah.
Only because
Right.
Dad's got one, but.
All right, well, what do we want to do?
It sounds like there's a fair amount of interest amongst us for at least considering opting in or proposing our own, crafting our own. Perhaps we could put it on an agenda in the near future, but the question is, what do we put on the agenda?
Right.
This- I think if we put it on at the end of the agenda in August, it's not that surprising that there aren't many residents here to listen to the conversation, so.
Yeah, I think putting something on the community listserv and having a conversation and asking people what, how they feel about it and what the pros and cons are and see how they weigh in would be very helpful before we make a decision.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be a little cautious about just asking people to weigh in on, say, the town forum, because then you just kind of get the loudest voices. I don't know if we want to go so far as to do a survey or to just include it. I don't know, do we ever do this in the past where we include a portion of our town council meeting where we're going to put it on the agenda earlier in the agenda
You-
and invite residents? Yeah.
Yeah,
We're
you did that,
inviting input
you did that back in,
to the town hall, right?
yes, I was gonna say, it was a special meeting you held in September. You did it as a public hearing. A logical next step for me might be to talk to Ron Bolt about this. Can you make something more lax than the county if you do your local ordinance? I think you can. I'm not saying you should. But perhaps let me talk to Ron Bolt. Maybe you could have a brief discussion in light of whatever information he shares, and maybe tailor what it is you're wanting public input on.
Yeah, not doubting the legal guidance we've
Yeah.
got here. But I mean,
Yeah, Ron and I had a very brief Ron and I had a brief discussion, and I'm not a lawyer, so I'd like to clarify
Yeah.
that with
and then
him.
we can have a real sense of what is possible, what are
Yeah.
permitted.
Barb, I'd also love you, I think it would be very helpful to talk to the town of Chevy Chase and find out, since they've enacted this ban, what has been the result? Like if
Yeah, I
have
believe,
people liked it, not liked it, if they had problems with it,
yeah,
unanticipated things. It would just be nice to know.
yeah, my understanding, and I'll confirm this, but I believe I had had an email exchange with the town manager in Chevy Chase, and I believe once the county enacted its own ban, I believe the town of Chevy Chase may have just opted into the county.
Right.
Because I think they were already under the county noise ordinance anyway. But I can check with the two managers who I believe were part of kind of a local experiment in terms of having their own ban before the
Yeah,
county acted and
I'd like to
see.
know that
Okay.
would be very helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
And is it possible to also check about, can we elect only to opt into a portion of this whole thing?
I know you can do that,
Oh, you-
because the town has actually done that in the, it's created a few issues I won't bore you with tonight, but, the town opted into only certain sections of the county's traffic code.
Okay.
So, and, I know you can do that.
If part of this is going to be going to the residents and asking for comments, is there any sentiment for at least narrowing the issues? I think of the four general approaches outlined in this memo, the least attractive is trying to fashion and enforce our own law.
I would agree.
It also raises the question that frequently comes up here, but usually in the land use thing, which is that people subject to it who do business in more than one jurisdiction have trouble following different standards, especially if we're a small jurisdiction. I don't want to prejudge anything, but if in fact we could say that our options are 1 through 3, it would help, I think, narrow the conversation.
I would suggest that we eliminate 2 also, because if you read through this whole thing, I mean, it is so muddy. Like one section here talks about noise disturbance, which can be almost anything. I mean, that's like, if you look, I don't know, call it the 3rd page here, and it talks about noise disturbance, anything that's unpleasant, annoying, loud, obnoxious. And we could end up with neighbors calling the cops on each other because, so-and-so was out yakking in his backyard last night.
I'd agree with that.
There's just, I mean, it even would ban, like, I know some people like it, some people don't, but like, you couldn't do the ice cream man, can't play his little tune anymore.
So bad.
A bunch of people say, hey, listen, he turned around right in front of my house. But anyway, like sounding a horn on private property unless it's an emergency, you know what I mean?
In other words, keep it very focused on the issue of gas powered leaf blowers.
Exactly.
And not open the door
Right.
to a whole discussion
Right.
around noise.
Right,
or-
right.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that was a major reason why we didn't pursue this further after the last conversation, but at that time, I don't think it was made clear that we might be able to opt into just a portion.
Just 31B.
Mhm.
Yeah, Phil, that's great. I think we eliminate 2, we eliminate 4. So now the options are do nothing or leaf blowers.
Agreed.
I mean, that simplify the process.
Yeah, I agree.
So could we do that, just to set aside a small amount of either the September or the October meeting
Mm.
to
Add it
allow
on
for
the
that
agenda.
conversation? I don't think it warrants a whole special meeting.
No,
Should. And then put it out to the town at the top of the meeting. We're gonna open up the floor to.
We
input.
could ask some of the committees how they feel, to ask their members, like Parks and Open Space and.
Sure, special outreach to the
Costa,
committees would be
Tree,
helpful.
what, Arboretum, and see how they feel about it.
Mhm.
Yeah, if I may suggest the October meeting, it's just as a reminder, you'll be getting the presentation of the cost estimate for town hall at the September
Yeah.
meeting.
Sure.
And I imagine, I don't know what Greg Wiedemann plans, but I imagine he'll probably have the cost estimating firm participating in the meeting in case there are questions, since it'll be their work.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. We don't really have the timetable available to adopt this for this season.
And Barb's talking about not even starting until August of 2026, so we've got a lot of time, we've got a year.
Well, no, the
Yeah.
residents have already sold their gas powered mowers because they thought it was,
Not my one.
like me, thought it applied to them.
And then what we do with our own maintenance is certainly related, but I think somewhat separate issue, because we might choose to contract that out or something that wouldn't subject us to quite this. I will observe that the,
You mean our own leaf blowers?
yeah,
We would contract that out?
I said it's an option. All I'm saying is that's a separate issue.
Okay.
Right, we don't have to make
It
that part of
shouldn't,
the.
it shouldn't influence a decision on the basic question of banning, not banning.
Okay, because
Okay.
we have the equipment. Is that what you mean?
Because we don't have the equipment and it would be expensive, and it would be
We have-
expensive to
right,
get it.
staying the same.
And the rebate program is terminated for 2025. So you can't get rebates until next year.
Okay.
There are a lot of subsidiary issues, I think. All right. Updates, let's start with the Parks and Open Spaces Committee.
I'll go quick. It's getting late. POSCO had a survey open throughout all of July. They had 166/7 responses. And this was really aimed at helping the committee develop recommendations to the council for future investments in outdoor space. So they're viewing this as the beginning of a longer process. In terms of, I don't want to get in front of them and their report, but the survey was really useful, I think, the data that was gathered. A couple of things it found is that in terms of enhancements, the town is very much interested in landscaping, removal of invasive species, interested in more bench seating, trash cans, picnic tables. In terms of priorities, it's the way many of you probably did the survey, you saw you ranked areas in order of priority: Cambria Field, Cambria Court/Dog Park, and Cambria Park were the 3 areas that received the highest votes for priority.
Cambria Park meaning the playground?
Playground,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
The committee is still taking time to fully analyze the results. They're gonna put something out to the town that thanks folks for completing the survey and captures a little bit of the results. And then their plan is to dig into developing recommendations for the committee or for the council. And they'll do that in conversation with each other. And I think they're gonna engage residents a little bit more as well. I want to thank Kayla for being brought in last minute, very last minute, to get this survey up and out in like 24 hours and keeping the POSCO committee informed of every step of the way. And thanks to Mayor Keller for providing a lot of important guidance to the committee as they somewhat hastily. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Good. John, any new developments on the boundary study?
Not really. I'll be really quick on mine too. Although if we go to 11 o'clock, that'll be a new record, at least for me. June 24th, I had an opportunity to testify in front of the Montgomery County Board of Education. We've talked about this extensively. Really, the two main takeaways there is to not arbitrarily divide or bifurcate Garrett Park along Strathmore and to keep us as a unified community. The second being kind of honor the commitments of the Walter Johnson cluster study, which is that kids in the appropriate age group are going to either WJ or the new Woodward. So that was reiterated. Thank you, Mayor Keller, for putting together the initial talking points, which we were able to deliver. The second is, more of a personal item. It's not meant to be kind of a PSA, but just over the last couple of months, we lost a resident as well as an employee at Black Market Bistro, pedestrians that were hit by cars. And I know that, in my home, we talk about this a lot, but to the extent that, especially in the summertime when, there are folks walking, to the extent that you can encourage, the kids in the household to walk at the appropriate crosswalks. We're seeing how dangerous that can be if that's not there. Sometimes it's easier. I know I do it all the time to walk where there's no crosswalk, but we've just seen, just in the last couple of months, two really unfortunate situations that would love to reduce going forward. Just wanted to mention that. That's all from my side.
Good. Have we all signed the card?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good. And traffic and pedestrian safety leads me to the next item, which is that last November, we had a particularly unfortunate accident, single car accident at the curve where Strathmore becomes Knowles and Raleigh enters. And it caused me to have some dealings with SHA, which finally came to fruition. A couple of weeks ago, we met, and the first steps have been taken. There is new striping to enhance the visibility of the curve and make it clear that it is a curve. We will get additional signage. Again, just calling attention to the curve. The two items that we asked for that they will explore in order for the SHA to incorporate certain, and the other thing that they will do is removal of vegetation that is currently obscuring some of the existing signage that calls attention to the speed limit and the curvature of the road. There are two things that they will investigate, but that need to meet so-called warrants in order to be actual implemented. And one is an advance warning of the operation of the extant crossing light at Keswick. If you're westbound on Knowles, in the curve, you don't see traffic that may have stopped at the crosswalk. So we'll try to get a sign further down that flashes when the crosswalk sign is on. The warrants for that are fairly rigorous, and I would be surprised if it comes about, but they're at least looking at it. What's the other one? Oh, a guardrail at the point on the westbound lane where people tend to leave the roadway and hit a tree. It's happened many times over the years, and there was one fatality. I'm not sure there's either room or the technical warrants for a guardrail, but we've asked for it.
And they also said they would look at a warrant to put a speed limit, how fast you're going.
Oh,
on-
yes.
On the.
Yeah,
On the road in that area, so we could try to slow the traffic down.
the radar activated thing.
Yeah,
You-
how fast,
Yeah.
the speed limit, they have those.
And if you ever wondered if public service would enlarge your knowledge, I learned that the name for the striping that we have there, it's solid adjacent to the curb. And then where Raleigh comes in, it's intermittent. And those are known as puppy tracks. I kid you not, puppy tracks. That's the
Technical
term.
term. Nice.
And that would be all I have. Is there anything further?
A question for you on that. Did, you happen to talk to them about the arrows or they decide to use signage or? You and I,
The chevrons? Oh, the arrow on,
Point.
painted on the street, yes.
Yeah, we talked
They
about
didn't
that.
do it. I'll thank them for what they've done
Yeah.
and remind them that we also asked for that. And one-way signs too.
right,
Yeah.
yep,
And
thanks.
Barbara, we gotten any progress on the Cambria ball field to get that regraded and sodded?
Yeah, a work order, I'd have to look at the date, but a work order has been signed with Clark Azar. There's a survey underway, and Jason was going, while the survey was being completed, Jason was going to check in with, someone at DPS to try to get a feel for what the permitting process is going to, that they're going to make us go through.
I'll shoot you an email, Barb, but I thought that would be good for Pasco, and I can forward it along to get an update as they factor in
Sure.
their discussions.
Okay.
around Next steps.
Sure.
They may not be able to.
Mr. Mayor, just one administrative note. I will be traveling to Las Vegas for work on September. So September 8th, I'll be remote.
Okay. Thank you.
Just FYI.
Well, this will be a case where what happens in Vegas.
Yeah.
Necessary.
Does not stay. Yes.
All right.
And that'll be for the early.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, that's fine.
So moved.
Very good. We stand adjourned.